Tonight, you're about to discover ancient wisdom that has guided seekers to inner peace for over 2,000 years. I'm going to share a selection of profound Zen stories that reveal the deepest secrets of mental freedom and emotional liberation. Each tale contains a transformative teaching that can shift your entire relationship with stress, anger, and the endless pursuit of more. These aren't ordinary bedtime stories. They're carefully preserved teachings from enlightened masters who understood something most of us have forgotten, that peace isn't found in changing our circumstances, but in changing our relationship to them. The Buddha once said, "The mind is everything. What you think, you become." In the next hour, you'll discover exactly how this ancient truth can transform your modern life. As we journey through tales of fierce samurai learning humility, disciples discovering wisdom in unexpected places, and farmers who lose everything only to gain freedom, you'll notice something remarkable happening. The tight grip of worry will begin to loosen. The constant chatter of your thoughts will start to quiet. You'll find yourself naturally settling into a state of profound understanding and rest. These stories have been whispered in monasteries, shared around meditation halls, and passed down through generations of seekers. Each one is a key that unlocks a different door in the mansion of your consciousness. Some doors lead to rooms where anger loses its power. Others open to spaces where the need to accumulate dissolves. Still others reveal chambers where simple presence becomes the greatest teacher. So settle in deeply now. Let your body sink into whatever supports you. Take one conscious breath with me, and as you exhale, know that you're about to receive teachings that have been waiting for you since the beginning of time. Let's begin. Our first story takes place in ancient Japan, where the morning mist clings to temple roofs and the sound of temple bells drifts through bamboo groves. This is the story of the samurai and the Zen master. In those days, a proud and brash samurai warrior lived for honor above all else. His reputation preceded him wherever he went, and his skill with the sword was matched only by his fierce temper. One day, burning with curiosity about spiritual matters, he sought out a renowned Zen master who was known throughout the land for his wisdom. The master sat in deep meditation beneath an ancient pine tree, his breathing so quiet it barely disturbed the morning air. The samurai approached with heavy footsteps, his armor clanking, his impatience growing with each moment the master remained silent. "Tell me the nature of heaven and hell," the samurai demanded, his voice cutting through the peaceful silence like a blade. The Zen master slowly opened one eye, looked directly into the samurai's face, and replied with sudden, cutting scorn, "Why should I answer to a shabby, disgusting, despondent slob like you? A worm like you? Do you think I should tell you anything? I can't stand you. Get out of my sight. I have no time for silly questions." The samurai's face flushed red with rage. How dare this monk insult a warrior of his standing? His hand flew to his sword, and in one fluid motion, he drew the blade and raised it high above the master's head, ready to strike down this insolent teacher. The Zen master looked straight into the samurai's blazing eyes and spoke with infinite tenderness. "That is hell." In that moment, the samurai froze completely. Understanding flooded through him like dawn breaking over mountains. He saw with crystal clarity that his anger had completely consumed him, transforming him into something he barely recognized. His mind had created its own hell, a realm filled with resentment, hatred, murderous rage, and the complete loss of his noble spirit. He realized he had been so deep in his torment that he was ready to kill an innocent teacher. Tears filled the warrior's eyes as the truth of his condition became undeniable. Slowly, reverently, he set his sword aside, pressed his palms together, and bowed deeply in gratitude for this profound teaching. The Zen master smiled with the gentleness of a father, welcoming home a lost child, and whispered, "And that is heaven." The Buddha taught, "You will not be punished for your anger. You will be punished by your anger." This profound truth reveals itself in the samurai's transformation from hell to heaven in a single moment of awakening. Why do we create our own hells so readily? Zen Buddhism points to what it calls the three poisons that cloud our natural wisdom: greed, hatred, and delusion. In this story, we see hatred in its raw form, not just as an emotion, but as a complete state of being that transforms paradise into torment. The samurai's hell wasn't a place he would go after death. It was the burning reality he created in his own mind and body in that very moment. His face flushed with rage, his heart pounding with fury, his entire being consumed by the desire to destroy. This was hell made manifest in human experience. Consider how often throughout your day you create similar states of torment. Perhaps someone cuts you off in traffic, and suddenly your peaceful morning dissolves into a cauldron of righteous anger. Maybe a coworker fails to acknowledge your greeting, and your mind begins spinning stories of disrespect and slight. These moments reveal the same pattern. We take external circumstances and use them as raw material to construct our own private hells. The master's apparent insults were not cruel but skillful. Like a surgeon using a sharp blade to remove a tumor, he used harsh words to reveal the rage that already existed within the samurai's heart. The anger wasn't created by the insults. It was already there, waiting to be triggered. The master simply provided a mirror that reflected the warrior's inner state back to him. Zen teacher Suzuki Roshi said, "Each of you is perfect the way you are, and you can use a little improvement." This paradox captures the essence of the samurai's journey. In his moment of perfect rage, he was also perfectly positioned to see through the illusion his anger had created. The transformation from hell to heaven happened not through changing external circumstances, but through a shift in awareness. The samurai didn't need to travel anywhere or acquire anything new. Heaven was revealed when he saw clearly the hell his own mind had constructed. This is the secret that transforms suffering. Hell and heaven are not destinations, but states of consciousness. When we're caught in anger, resentment, or hatred, we inhabit hell regardless of our external circumstances. When we see through these mental constructions and return to our natural state of awareness, heaven reveals itself right where we are. In Zen practice, we learn to recognize these hellish states as soon as they arise. We develop what might be called early warning systems for our own mental and emotional storms. The tightening in the chest, the heating of the face, the accelerating heartbeat, all these become signals that we're constructing a hell that we'll have to live in. The Buddha said, "Hatred is never appeased by hatred in this world. By non-hatred alone is hatred appeased. This is a law eternal." The samurai discovered this law in his own direct experience. His anger could not be resolved through violence, but was instantly dissolved through understanding. Tonight, as you notice any areas of tension or irritation in your own experience, can you observe them with the same clarity the samurai discovered? Can you see how your own thoughts and reactions create the quality of your inner world? As the Zen master showed, heaven is always available, not as a reward for good behavior, but as the natural state revealed when we stop creating hell. Now let us journey to a peaceful monastery nestled beside a flowing river, where a master and his disciples practiced the art of mindful living. This is the story of the questioning disciple and his teacher's unusual guidance. In a quiet monastery nestled beside a flowing river, a Zen master lived with his devoted disciples. Each morning, they would walk together to bathe in the clear, cool waters, practicing mindfulness with each step on the worn path. The sound of water flowing over stones provided a constant reminder of impermanence and the natural flow of existence. One particular morning, after their ritual cleansing, the master emerged from the river with water droplets glistening on his robes. His disciples gathered around him as he walked, their faces eager for teaching, their notebooks ready to capture pearls of wisdom. Among them was a particularly earnest young monk who had traveled great distances to study under this revered teacher. As they walked slowly back toward the monastery, the disciple could no longer contain his burning question. "Dear Master," he said with deep reverence, "what should I do to realize Zen? I have studied texts, practiced meditation, and followed all the prescribed methods, yet enlightenment still seems so distant." The master paused in his walking and pointed to a dog lying peacefully by the riverbank, its fur still wet from an early morning drink. The animal rested in complete contentment, occasionally lifting its head to watch a butterfly or listen to bird songs, then settling back into serene presence. "Learn from that dog," the master said simply, then continued walking. The disciple felt a sharp stab of disappointment pierce his chest. After all his sincere seeking, after traveling so far and dedicating so much time to practice, was his teacher mocking him? Anger began to rise in his throat like bitter medicine. "Oh, Master," he said, struggling to keep his voice respectful, "what can I possibly learn from a dog? I have come seeking the highest wisdom, not animal behavior." The master walked on in peaceful silence, his footsteps creating a gentle rhythm on the monastery path. Birds sang in the branches above, and somewhere in the distance, temple bells marked the passing hours. But the disciple heard none of this beauty. His mind churned with frustration and wounded pride. Unable to bear the silence, he pressed on. "I don't want to learn from that dog. Please, Master, give me real spiritual instruction. Tell me something profound that will help me achieve enlightenment." The master stopped again and pointed to another dog they encountered on the road. This one was hungrily eating scraps of food left by passing travelers, its tail wagging with simple satisfaction at finding nourishment. "Then learn from this dog," the master said with the same gentle authority. Now the disciple's composure cracked completely. "You are making fun of me, Master. What can I possibly learn from a dog? All it does is eat and sleep. I have come to you precisely to become free from such basic, mindless existence." The master turned to face his student fully, his eyes holding infinite compassion mixed with gentle amusement. "You also eat and sleep," he observed quietly, then walked into his meditation hut, leaving the disciple standing frozen in the courtyard. The Buddha taught, 3 things cannot be long hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. This story reveals a truth. that our sophisticated minds often struggle to accept. The wisdom we seek is already present in the simplest moments of being. Why did the disciple resist such a simple teaching? Zen Buddhism points to what might be called spiritual materialism, the ego's tendency to turn even spiritual practice into another form of acquisition and achievement. The disciple wanted something special, something that would set him apart from ordinary existence and confirm his identity as a serious seeker. The dogs in this story represent what Zen calls Buddha nature, the natural, unconditioned awareness that exists before the mind creates elaborate stories about spiritual attainment. The first dog, resting by the river, embodied perfect presence. It wasn't trying to achieve anything or become anyone special. It simply existed in complete harmony with the moment. The second dog, eating scraps, demonstrated another aspect of Buddha nature, the ability to meet life's basic needs without drama or commentary. It didn't complain about the quality of the food or worry about whether eating scraps reflected poorly on its spiritual status. It simply ate when hungry, with gratitude and attention. Consider how often we complicate our own existence with layers of spiritual or psychological concepts. We meditate, but worry we're not meditating correctly. We practice mindfulness, but judge our wandering minds. We seek enlightenment, but create suffering through our very seeking. The dogs, in their simplicity, point to a way of being that transcends these complications. The master's final observation, "You also eat and sleep," cuts through all pretense. Despite all our spiritual aspirations and sophisticated practices, we remain biological beings with simple needs. The question becomes, can we meet these basic realities with the same presence and acceptance the dogs demonstrated? Zen teacher Dogen wrote, "To study the Buddha way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self." The disciple was studying concepts about enlightenment rather than studying his actual moment-to-moment experience. The dogs, without any concept of Buddha nature, were perfectly expressing it. This doesn't mean we should abandon formal practice or intellectual understanding. Rather, it suggests that our practice should make us more natural, more present, more able to meet ordinary moments with extraordinary awareness. The dogs weren't practicing Zen, they were simply being themselves completely. The shock the disciple experienced when told he also eats and sleeps was the recognition of this simple truth. His spiritual seeking had created a false separation between ordinary activities and spiritual ones. The master's teaching dissolved this artificial boundary, revealing that every moment, eating, sleeping, walking, even feeling frustrated, offers opportunities for awakening. In Zen monasteries, work practice is considered as important as sitting meditation. Chopping vegetables, sweeping floors, and tending gardens are all forms of spiritual cultivation when approached with full attention. The dogs understood this intuitively. Every activity could be performed with complete presence and natural ease. The Buddha said, "If you want to know your past, look at your present condition. If you want to know your future, look at your present actions." The dogs were neither dwelling on the past nor anxious about the future. They inhabited the eternal now with perfect simplicity. Tonight, as you prepare for rest, can you approach sleep with the natural ease the dogs demonstrated? Can you meet your basic human needs, breathing, relaxing, letting go, without turning them into complex spiritual projects? As the master showed, the deepest wisdom often comes disguised as the most ordinary experience. Our next story reveals a profound truth about attachment and freedom through a simple encounter between the Buddha and a desperate farmer. This is the story of the farmer's cows and the Buddha's gentle teaching about true wealth. It was midday in a peaceful grove where the Buddha sat with his community of monks after sharing their simple meal together. They had eaten mindfully, in gratitude for the food that sustained their bodies and the companionship that nourished their spirits. The filtered sunlight created dancing patterns on the forest floor, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of wildflowers. Suddenly, the tranquil atmosphere was shattered by the appearance of a farmer, his face flushed with panic and desperation. His clothes were disheveled, sweat beaded on his forehead, and his breathing came in short, anxious gasps. He rushed toward the group, his eyes darting frantically in all directions. "Monks, have you seen my cows?" he called out before he had even properly approached. "Please, I beg you, have you seen them? I don't think I can survive so much misfortune." The Buddha looked up at the agitated man with infinite compassion, recognizing the familiar signs of a mind caught in the grip of attachment and fear. "What has happened, friend?" he asked gently. The farmer's words tumbled out in a torrent of anguish. "Monks, this morning all 12 of my cows ran away. Every single one. And if that weren't enough, this year my entire crop of sesame plants was eaten by insects. Everything I worked for, everything I counted on, it's all gone. These cows were my livelihood, my security, my future. Without them, I am nothing. I have nothing left." The Buddha nodded with understanding, seeing clearly the suffering that comes from building our identity and security upon external circumstances. "Sir, we have not seen your cows," he replied calmly. "Perhaps they have gone in the other direction." The farmer bowed hastily in gratitude and rushed off down the path, still calling for his lost animals, his voice growing fainter as he disappeared into the forest. After the farmer had gone, the Buddha turned to his community of monks with eyes that sparkled with gentle humor and deep wisdom. A knowing smile played at the corners of his mouth as he looked at each of his followers, these men who had voluntarily given up worldly possessions to seek truth and inner freedom. "Dear friends," he said, his voice carrying both lightness and profound insight, "do you know you are the happiest people on earth? You have no cows or sesame plants to lose." The monks sat in contemplative silence, absorbing the deeper meaning of their teacher's words. They began to understand that what the world might see as deprivation, their simple robes, their basic meals, their lack of material possessions, was actually a form of great wealth. They were wealthy in freedom, rich in presence, abundant in peace. The Buddha continued, his teaching flowing like water, finding its natural course. We always try to accumulate more and more, believing these cows are essential for our existence. In fact, they may be the very obstacles that prevent us from being truly happy. Release your cows and become a free person. Release your cows and discover happiness that cannot be taken away. The Buddha taught, you only lose what you cling to. This profound truth reveals itself in the contrast between the farmer's panic and the monk's peace. The farmer's suffering wasn't caused by the loss of his cows, but by his attachment to them as the source of his security and identity. Why do we accumulate cows, possessions, achievements, relationships, even spiritual experiences? believing they will bring us lasting happiness. Zen Buddhism points to our fundamental misunderstanding about the nature of security and fulfillment. We look outside ourselves for stability in a world where everything is constantly changing. The farmer's 12 cows and sesame crop represent all the external things we grasp for security: our bank accounts, our job titles, our social status, our health, our relationships, even our self-image as spiritual seekers. Each of these can bring temporary satisfaction, but they all share one crucial characteristic: they can be lost. This doesn't mean we should abandon responsibility or become indifferent to practical matters. The Buddha wasn't suggesting we should all become homeless wanderers. Rather, he was pointing to the difference between using things skillfully and being used by them. The monks still ate food and wore robes, but they held these necessities lightly, without the desperate clinging that creates suffering. Consider your own cows, the things you tell yourself you couldn't live without. Perhaps it's a certain standard of living, a particular role in your family or workplace, or even your health and physical capabilities. Notice how much mental energy goes into protecting, maintaining, and worrying about these possessions. This energy, which could be available for presence, compassion, and genuine fulfillment, gets locked up in a constant cycle of acquisition and protection. The deepest teaching in this story is that happiness based on having is always vulnerable to loss, while happiness based on being is unassailable. The monks had discovered what Zen calls the treasure house, the inherent wholeness that exists prior to gaining or losing anything. Zen master Huang Po taught, "Your treasure house is in yourself. It contains all you need." The farmer was looking in the forest for cows that, even if found, would only provide temporary security. The monks had found a treasure that required no protection because it could never be stolen. This doesn't mean we stop caring for our responsibilities or become careless with resources. Rather, we begin to hold our possessions, both material and psychological, more lightly. We use them without being used by them. We enjoy them without depending on them for our fundamental well-being. The farmer's frantic search represents the endless activity of a mind that believes happiness lies in the next acquisition, the next achievement, the next external validation. The monk's peaceful sitting represents the revolutionary discovery that we already have everything we need for genuine fulfillment. In our modern context, our cows might be our career advancement, our children's success, our romantic relationship, our retirement savings, or even our meditation practice. The question isn't whether these things have value, but whether we hold them so tightly that losing them would devastate our sense of self. The Buddha said, "Health is the greatest gift, contentment the greatest wealth, faithfulness the best relationship." The monks embodied this teaching. Their contentment didn't depend on external circumstances, but arose from their deep acceptance of what is. Tonight, as you prepare for rest, can you release your grip on the cows you've been protecting? Can you discover the peace that comes from having nothing to lose because you've found everything you need in this very moment? As the Buddha taught, the end of suffering isn't found in getting what we want, but in releasing our attachment to wanting itself. In this release, we discover what the monks knew, that we are already free, already whole, already home. We just forgot this truth while we were busy chasing cows. In the misty mountains of feudal Japan, where legends of master swordsmen echo through the valleys, we discover a tale about the paradox of urgent learning. This is the story of Matajuro and the taste of his master's sword. In feudal Japan, nestled among the mist-covered peaks of Mount Futara, lived Banzo, a swordsman whose skill was legendary throughout the land. His reputation drew seekers from across the country, all hoping to learn the secret of his extraordinary mastery. Among these hopeful students came a young man named Matajuro Yagyu, carrying the weight of disappointment and desperate ambition. Matajuro was the son of a famous swordsman, yet his father had pronounced his work too mediocre for mastership and disowned him in shame. The young man's pride burned with this rejection, fueling an urgent hunger to prove his worth. He climbed the mountain path to Banzo's modest dwelling with determination blazing in his eyes. "Master Banzo," Matajuro said, bowing deeply, "I wish to learn swordsmanship under your guidance. I will do anything, endure any hardship." Banzo studied the young man carefully, seeing immediately the fever of impatience that consumed him. "You cannot fulfill the requirements," he said simply. "But if I work hard," Matajuro persisted, his voice tight with anxiety, "how many years will it take to become a master?" "The rest of your life," Banzo replied without hesitation. The answer struck Matajuro like a physical blow. "I cannot wait that long," he exclaimed. "I am willing to pass through any hardship, if only you will teach me. If I become your devoted servant, working day and night, how long might it be?" Banzo considered this for a moment. "Oh, maybe 10 years. Hope flickered in the young man's chest, but his impatience quickly consumed it. "My father is getting old, and soon I must take care of him. If I work far more intensively with complete dedication, how long would it take me?" "Oh, maybe 30 years, said Banzo calmly. Matajuro's eyes widened in confusion and frustration. "Why is that? First you say 10, and now 30 years. I will undergo any hardship to master this art in the shortest time possible." "Well," said Banzo, with the faintest smile, "in that case, you will have to remain with me for 70 years. A man in such a hurry as you are to get results seldom learns quickly." The words hung in the mountain air like temple bells, their truth gradually penetrating the young man's consciousness. Finally, understanding dawned. "Very well," declared Matajuro, his voice now quiet with new wisdom. "I agree." From that day forward, Matajuro was forbidden to speak of fencing or even touch a sword. Instead, he cooked for his master, washed dishes, made beds, cleaned the courtyard, and tended the garden. Day after day, month after month, not a single word of swordsmanship passed between them. 3 years dragged by in this seemingly mundane routine. As Matajuro swept leaves and prepared meals, sadness would sometimes wash over him. Had he devoted his life to becoming a servant rather than a swordsman? But one ordinary morning, as he knelt preparing rice, Banzo crept silently behind him and delivered a tremendous blow with a wooden sword. The young man cried out in shock and pain. The next day, while stirring soup, Banzo struck again without warning. From that moment forward, day and night, Matajuro had to remain constantly alert. Every moment became filled with the possibility of attack. He learned to sense his master's presence, to hear the whisper of approaching footsteps, to feel the subtle shift in the air that preceded a strike. Not a moment passed that he did not have to think of what he came to call the taste of Banzo's sword. That sharp awareness, that kept him perpetually present and responsive. His entire being became attuned to the subtle rhythms of danger and safety, action and stillness. Gradually, Matajuro's defensive skills grew so refined that he could sense an attack before it was even launched. His movements became fluid, effortless, perfectly timed. The smile that began to appear on Banzo's face told him everything he needed to know. In time, Matajuro became the greatest swordsman in all the land. The Buddha taught, "Drop by drop is the water pot filled." Likewise, the wise one, gathering it little by little, fills oneself with good. This story reveals the profound truth that mastery comes not through forced acceleration, but through patient cultivation of awareness. Why do we believe that urgency will speed our learning? Zen Buddhism points to what might be called achievement mind, the ego's desperate need to acquire skills, knowledge, or spiritual attainments as quickly as possible. This urgency actually becomes the primary obstacle to genuine learning because it keeps us focused on future results rather than present process. Matajuro's initial approach represents how most of us engage with learning. We want to fast-track our way to mastery, to find shortcuts that will deliver results without the slow work of fundamental development. We negotiate with reality, trying to bargain our way to competence through intensity rather than patience. Banzo's counterintuitive teaching, that greater urgency would require more time, reveals a crucial principle. The quality of our attention determines the speed of our learning far more than the quantity of our effort. Matajuro's desperate hurry created internal tension that actually blocked his capacity to absorb the subtle teachings of swordsmanship. Consider how this pattern shows up in your own life. Perhaps you're learning a musical instrument and become frustrated that you can't play complex pieces immediately. Maybe you're developing a meditation practice, but grow impatient that enlightenment hasn't arrived after a few weeks. The urgency itself becomes a form of resistance to the natural unfolding that learning requires. The 3 years of seemingly mundane tasks weren't a delay in Matajuro's education. They were the foundation of his mastery. Through cooking, cleaning, and gardening, he developed the quality of presence and attention that would later allow him to sense his master's attacks. His consciousness became refined through simple, repetitive activities performed with complete attention. When Banzo finally began the sword training, it came not through formal instruction, but through the cultivation of what Zen calls don't know mind, a state of open, alert awareness that responds spontaneously to changing circumstances. Matajuro learned to taste his master's sword, not through thinking about technique, but through developing an embodied wisdom that transcended conscious strategy. The taste of Banzo's sword represents the quality of awareness that emerges when we stop forcing outcomes and instead become completely available to what each moment requires. It's the difference between studying about balance and actually learning to walk, between reading about love and learning to open our hearts. This teaching applies to every area of development, whether we're learning to parent with wisdom, developing patience in relationships, or cultivating inner peace. The ego's urgency to get there keeps us from being here, where all real learning happens. The Buddha said, "Nothing can harm you as much as your own thoughts unguarded." Matajuro's initial impatience was a form of unguarded thinking that would have prevented him from ever accessing true mastery. Through Banzo's skillful guidance, he learned to transform urgency into presence, achievement focus into process focus, and forced effort into natural responsiveness. Tonight, as you notice any areas of your life where impatience pushes against natural timing, can you taste something of Banzo's wisdom? Can you discover how slowing down might actually accelerate your deepest learning? As Matajuro found, the sword we're really learning to master is the blade of our own awareness. Deep in a village where cherry blossoms mark the seasons of love and loss, unfolds a story about the wisdom of seeing through our own mental creations. This is the story of the ghost who knew everything. In a small village where cherry blossoms lined the quiet streets, a young couple lived in deep devotion to one another. Their love was the kind that seems to make the whole world brighter, each day beginning and ending with gratitude for their shared life. But as often happens in human existence, their happiness was visited by the shadow of impermanence. The young wife fell gravely ill, and despite all their prayers and the best care they could provide, it became clear that death was approaching. As her strength ebbed away, her love for her husband seemed to intensify, as if she were trying to pour a lifetime of affection into their remaining moments together. "I love you so much," she whispered to him with her last breaths, her hand gripping his with surprising strength. "I do not want to leave you. Promise me. Do not go to any other woman. If you do, I will return as a ghost and cause you endless trouble." The husband, tears streaming down his face, promised solemnly to honor her wish. Soon after, she passed away peacefully in his arms, leaving him alone in a world that suddenly felt hollow and colorless. For 3 months, the husband kept his promise faithfully. He tended her grave daily, spoke to her photograph each morning, and couldn't imagine ever loving another. But grief, while it honors love, cannot sustain life indefinitely. Slowly, despite his guilt, he began to notice the world around him again. The sound of children playing, the warmth of sunlight, the gentle kindness of neighbors who brought him meals. One day, a woman who had been bringing him food lingered to talk, and he found himself laughing for the first time since his wife's death. Their conversations grew longer and more frequent. Despite his resistance, he felt his heart beginning to open again. When they became engaged to be married, he told himself his first wife would have wanted him to find happiness. That very night, his peaceful sleep was shattered by a terrifying apparition. His deceased wife appeared at the foot of his bed, her face twisted with jealousy and rage. "You promised," she shrieked. "You swore you would never love another. How could you betray me so quickly?" The husband sat bolt upright, his heart hammering with terror and guilt. But the ghost's torment had only begun. Night after night, she appeared with increasingly detailed accusations. She knew exactly what gifts he had given his new fiancée, describing the silk scarf and its intricate pattern, recounting word for word the intimate conversations they had shared by the river, even revealing private moments of affection. "I know everything you do," the ghost would wail. "Every thought, every touch, every whispered word of love that should have been mine." The man began to lose weight and sleep. His fiancée noticed his haggard appearance and growing anxiety, but how could he explain that his dead wife was haunting their relationship? The situation became unbearable. Finally, a neighbor suggested he seek counsel from a wise Zen master who lived in a small temple outside the village. In desperation, the man made the journey and poured out his story to the old teacher. The master listened with patient attention, occasionally nodding with understanding. When the tale was finished, he stroked his beard thoughtfully. "Your former wife became a ghost and knows everything you do," the master observed calmly. "Whatever you say, whatever you give your beloved, she knows. She must be a very wise ghost indeed. Really, you should admire such supernatural knowledge." The man looked puzzled, unsure whether the master was mocking his suffering. "The next time she appears," continued the master, "bargain with her. Tell her that since she knows so much and you can hide nothing from her, if she will answer you one question truthfully, you promise to break your engagement and remain single for the rest of your life." "What question should I ask?" the man inquired eagerly. The master smiled with gentle mischief. "Take a large handful of soybeans and ask her exactly how many beans you hold in your hand. If she cannot tell you, you will know she is only a figment of your imagination and will trouble you no longer." That night, when the ghost appeared with her usual accusations and supernatural knowledge, the man was ready. He flattered her extensively, praising her omniscience and admitting he could hide nothing from her penetrating awareness. "Indeed," replied the ghost with satisfaction, "and I know you went to see that Zen master today. I heard every word he said to you." "And since you know so much," demanded the man, holding up a closed fist filled with beans, "tell me exactly how many beans I hold in this hand." Suddenly, there was only silence in the moonlit room. The ghost vanished completely and never appeared again. The Buddha taught, "The whole secret of existence is to have no fear. Never fear what will become of you. Depend on no one. Only the moment you reject all help are you freed." This story reveals how our own minds create the very phantoms that terrorize us. Why do we give such power to the ghosts of our past? Zen Buddhism points to several psychological mechanisms that keep us trapped by internal apparitions. First is guilt, the mind's tendency to punish ourselves for moving beyond old loyalties, even when that movement is natural and healthy. The ghost's supernatural knowledge wasn't actually supernatural at all. She knew about the gifts and conversations because the man's own guilty conscience was creating her omniscience. Every detail she recounted was information already present in his own mind, projected outward and given the appearance of external reality. This represents a profound teaching about the nature of psychological haunting. The demons that torment us, guilt, shame, fear, regret, often appear to have external reality and independent power. They seem to know our every weakness, to see through our every defense, to anticipate our every attempt at escape. But like the ghost in this story, they derive all their knowledge from our own consciousness. Consider the ghosts that might be haunting your own life. Perhaps it's the voice of a critical parent that continues to judge your choices long after they're gone. Maybe it's the specter of past failures that convinces you not to try again. Or it could be the phantom of old relationships that prevents you from opening your heart to new love. These psychological ghosts often seem to possess uncanny insight into our vulnerabilities. They know exactly which accusations will wound us most deeply, which fears will paralyze us most completely. But their apparent omniscience is simply our own self-knowledge turned against us by guilt and conditioning. The Zen master's test with the beans represents the power of discriminating wisdom to dissolve psychological illusions. By asking for information the ghost couldn't possibly possess, something outside the man's own knowledge, he revealed her true nature as a mental construction rather than an independent entity. This doesn't diminish the reality of the man's suffering. The ghost's psychological impact was absolutely real, affecting his sleep, his relationships, and his peace of mind. But understanding her true source gave him the power to dissolve her hold over his life. Zen teacher Suzuki Roshi said, "Each of you is perfect the way you are, and you can use a little improvement." This paradox applies to our relationship with psychological ghosts. We can acknowledge the reality of our guilt and conditioning while also recognizing that these patterns aren't permanent features of our consciousness. The beans represent any question that takes us outside the closed loop of our conditioned thinking. When we're caught in cycles of self-torment, we can ask ourselves, what evidence exists outside my own guilty conscience that this self-punishment is necessary or helpful? Often, like the ghost, our internal critics fall silent when confronted with such inquiries. The master's gentle mischief in this story shows how wisdom sometimes appears as playfulness rather than solemn instruction. He didn't argue with the man's belief in the ghost or try to convince him through rational analysis. Instead, he provided a skillful test that allowed the truth to reveal itself. The Buddha said, "You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection." The man's liberation came not through continued loyalty to his dead wife's jealous demands, but through recognizing his right to love and be loved again. The ghost dissolved when he stopped feeding it with his own guilty energy. Tonight, as you become aware of any ghosts from your past that continue to haunt your present choices, can you find your own handful of beans? Can you ask these internal critics questions they cannot answer, revealing their true nature as constructions of your own conditioning rather than voices of ultimate truth? As the Zen master showed, sometimes the most profound liberation comes through the simplest test of what is real and what is merely the shadow of our own making. Now, among the sacred pilgrimage routes that wind through ancient landscapes, we encounter a teaching about the discovery of what was never truly lost. This is the story of the 10 pilgrims and the missing traveler. In ancient times, when pilgrimage routes wound through mountain passes and across rushing rivers, 10 monks embarked on an arduous journey to a distant holy city. They walked for days through challenging terrain, their hearts filled with devotion and their minds focused on the sacred destination that lay ahead. Each step was taken with intention, each mile covered with the hope that reaching the holy place would bring them closer to enlightenment. At one point in their journey, they came to a fierce river that roared with spring snowmelt, its waters rushing violently between jagged rocks that could easily crush anyone who lost their footing. The crossing would require careful attention and mutual support. One mistake could be fatal. One by one, the pilgrims helped each other navigate the treacherous waters. They formed a human chain, the strongest monks positioning themselves to catch anyone who might slip. Slowly, carefully, with hearts pounding and prayers on their lips, they made their way across the dangerous passage. When they finally reached the safety of the far shore, they collapsed on the rocky bank, grateful to be alive and relieved to have overcome such a perilous obstacle. Their robes were soaked, their sandals filled with river water, but they had survived what could have been a disaster. The leader of the group, feeling the weight of responsibility for his fellow pilgrims, decided to count everyone to ensure they had all crossed safely. This was a reasonable precaution. In the confusion and fear of the crossing, it would be easy to lose track of someone. "Line up, brothers," he called out, "so I can confirm we are all here." The monks arranged themselves in a row, and their leader began to count carefully. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He paused, counting again with growing alarm. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Horror spread across his face as the terrible truth seemed to dawn. "Brothers!" he cried out in anguish. "Only 9 of us have made it across. One of our beloved companions has been lost to the river." The other monks gasped in shock and grief. Each one began to count for himself, hoping their leader had made an error. But one after another, each monk arrived at the same devastating conclusion. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Only 9 pilgrims had survived the crossing. They began to weep and wail, calling out the names of their missing brother, wondering who among them had been swept away by the merciless current. Their joy at surviving the crossing transformed into bitter mourning for their lost companion. As they sat by the river in their grief, a wise stranger happened upon the scene. He observed the 10 monks, for indeed, there were 10 of them clearly visible to his eyes, weeping and lamenting as if someone had died. "Good brothers," he asked gently, "what has happened to cause such an outpouring of sorrow?" The leader looked up through his tears. "Kind stranger, we are pilgrims on a sacred journey. There were 10 of us when we began to cross this dangerous river, but now one of our beloved brothers has been lost in the waters. We cannot find him anywhere." The stranger looked around, counting the monks before him with a puzzled expression. By his count, there were clearly 10 pilgrims present. Understanding dawned on him, and he had to suppress a smile at the innocent mistake that was causing such unnecessary suffering. "Sir," he said kindly, "would you please count your group again, just to make certain?" "Yes, of course," replied the leader, who began counting aloud once more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. His voice broke on the final number. "Oh, alas, one is gone forever." "But, sir," said the stranger gently, "you have forgotten to count yourself." In that moment, profound silence fell over the group. The leader looked down at his own body as if seeing it for the first time. Understanding flooded through all 10 monks simultaneously. Their missing brother had never been lost. He had been right there all along, doing the counting. Joy erupted from the group as they realized the magnitude of their error. Their tears of grief transformed into laughter at their own beautiful foolishness. The 10th pilgrim was found without having to search anywhere at all. The Buddha taught, "Look within. Within is the fountain of good, and it will ever bubble up if you will ever dig." This story reveals the cosmic joke at the heart of all spiritual seeking. We search everywhere for what we never actually lost. Why do we consistently forget to count ourselves in the search for completeness? Zen Buddhism points to what might be called the looking outside habit, our deeply conditioned tendency to search for fulfillment, peace, and wholeness in external circumstances, achievements, or experiences. The 10 pilgrims represent our various attempts to find ourselves through spiritual practice, personal development, or life accomplishments. Like the monks crossing the dangerous river, we often endure great hardships and overcome significant obstacles in our quest for something we believe is missing from our lives. The act of counting others while forgetting ourselves perfectly captures how consciousness works when caught in seeking mode. We can see and account for everything in our experience: our thoughts, emotions, circumstances, relationships, achievements, while somehow overlooking the aware presence that is doing all the observing. Consider how this pattern manifests in daily life. We search for happiness in the next purchase, relationship, or accomplishment, forgetting that the capacity for happiness is the very awareness doing the searching. We seek peace through meditation techniques or lifestyle changes, overlooking the peaceful awareness that exists prior to any mental or physical state. The pilgrim's grief over their lost companion represents the genuine suffering we experience when we believe something essential is missing from our lives. This isn't mere intellectual confusion. It creates real emotional pain, just as the monk's tears were authentic, even though based on a misunderstanding. The wise stranger who helped them see their error represents the function of awakened wisdom, whether it comes through a teacher, a moment of insight, or sudden recognition. This wisdom doesn't add anything new to our experience, but simply points out what was always already present. Zen Master Bankai taught, "You are perfect as you are, but you could use a little improvement." This paradox captures the essence of the pilgrim's discovery. They were already complete, all 10 were present, but they needed to recognize this completeness rather than continuing to search for what seemed missing. The moment of recognition, when the leader realized he had forgotten to count himself, represents what Zen calls sudden awakening. Not because anything new is gained, but because the seeking that was obscuring our natural wholeness suddenly ceases. This doesn't mean we stop engaging in practices or pursuing growth. The pilgrims continued their journey to the holy city, even after discovering they weren't missing anyone. But their relationship to the journey changed from desperate seeking to joyful expression of what they had discovered they already possessed. The Buddha said, "Everything we need is inside us. We just need to access it." The stranger's simple observation created this access not by adding information, but by redirecting attention from outward searching to present awareness. In our modern context, we might be counting our accomplishments, relationships, possessions, or spiritual experiences, while forgetting to include the awareness that makes all counting possible. We catalog our progress in meditation, therapy, or personal development, while overlooking the unchanging presence that observes all progress. The most profound aspect of this teaching is its revelation that enlightenment isn't a state to be attained, but our natural condition to be recognized. Like the 10th pilgrim, we were never actually lost. We just forgot to include ourselves in our inventory of what's present. Tonight, as you prepare for rest, can you find the awareness that has been present through every moment of your seeking? Can you discover the one who has been looking for peace, happiness, or fulfillment all along? As the wise stranger showed, sometimes the most profound discoveries require nothing more than remembering to count ourselves among those who are already here, already whole, already home. Our next story reveals the transformative power of genuine repentance and the way authentic service can heal even the deepest wounds. This is the story of Zenkai and the tunnel through the mountain. In the bustling capital city of Edo, where samurai walked with purposeful strides and merchants called out their wares, lived a young man named Zenkai. Born into the warrior class, he had been raised with strict codes of honor and duty, but like many young men, he found himself drawn away from these teachings by the pull of passion and desire. Zenkai had become the retainer of a high government official, a position that brought him close to power and privilege. But proximity to his master's household also brought him into contact with the official's beautiful wife. What began as stolen glances across courtyards grew into secret meetings and whispered conversations. Despite his training in self-discipline, Zenkai found himself consumed by a love that violated every principle he had been taught. When their affair was eventually discovered, the confrontation was swift and terrible. The official's rage was absolute, and in the heat of the moment, fearing for his life, Zenkai drew his sword and killed his master. With blood on his hands and his honor shattered, he fled the capital with the woman, two fugitives bound together by shared guilt and desperation. For months they wandered, surviving as thieves and outcasts. But the woman's greed grew with each stolen coin, her demands becoming more excessive and dangerous. Zenkai watched with growing disgust as the person he had sacrificed everything for revealed her true nature. Finally, unable to bear the corruption they had both embraced, he left her and wandered alone into the remote province of Buzin. In that desolate place, far from the life he had known, Zenkai became a wandering mendicant. His samurai robes were replaced by rough hemp, his sword traded for a begging bowl. But more than his external circumstances had changed. The weight of his actions pressed down on him like a mountain. He had taken a life, destroyed a family, and abandoned every principle his upbringing had instilled. During his solitary wanderings, Zenkai discovered a treacherous mountain pass where a narrow road clung to sheer cliffs. Local villagers told him stories of travelers who had fallen to their deaths, of families separated when horses lost their footing on the crumbling path. The road had claimed dozens of lives over the years, yet it remained the only route connecting several isolated communities. Standing at the edge of that dangerous precipice, an extraordinary resolve crystallized in Zenkai's heart. He would cut a tunnel through the solid rock of the mountain, creating a safe passage for all future travelers. This would be his offering to the world, not to earn forgiveness, for he believed himself unforgivable, but simply because it was the right thing to do. With only primitive tools, Zenkai began the impossible task. Each day, he begged for food in nearby villages, and each night, he returned to chip away at the mountain by torchlight. Villagers thought him mad. One man attempting to bore through solid rock with hand tools seemed like the fantasy of a broken mind. But Zenkai persisted. Day after day, month after month, year after year, his hands became permanently scarred from the rough tools, his back bent from the constant labor. 30 years passed in this fashion. The tunnel grew slowly, 2,280 feet long, 20 feet high, 30 feet wide. Each foot of progress was earned through countless strikes of chisel against stone. 2 years before the work was completed, Zenkai's past finally caught up with him. The son of the official he had slain, now grown into a skilled swordsman, had spent years tracking his father's killer. When he finally found Zenkai, grey-haired and weathered from decades of labor, the young man's sword was already drawn. "I have come to claim my father's revenge," he announced, his voice steady with long-nursed anger. Zenkai set down his tools and faced his pursuer with calm acceptance. "I will give you my life willingly," he said without hesitation. "Only let me finish this work. On the day the tunnel is completed, then you may kill me." The young swordsman agreed to wait, expecting the work to be finished within days. But as weeks turned to months, and he watched Zenkai's relentless dedication to the task, something unexpected began to happen. Initially, the waiting became tedious, so he started helping with the digging simply to pass time. But as he worked alongside the man he had planned to kill, the swordsman began to see something he hadn't expected. Zenkai's commitment was absolute, not the obsession of a madman, but the focused determination of someone who had found authentic purpose. The killer he had imagined turned out to be a man who had spent 30 years of his life creating something that would serve countless people he would never meet. Month after month, the young man helped dig. He watched Zenkai's gentle interactions with villagers, saw how the older man refused any comfort for himself while working tirelessly for others. Gradually, admiration replaced hatred. The man he had come to kill had become his teacher in dedication, service, and the transformation of guilt into compassionate action. At last, the tunnel was completed. Villagers celebrated as the first travelers passed safely through the mountain. Children ran through the passage, their laughter echoing off the carved walls. Families could now visit each other without risking their lives on the treacherous cliff road. Standing at the tunnel's entrance, Zenkai turned to the young swordsman. "Now cut off my head," he said simply. "My work is done." But the young man's eyes filled with tears. "How can I cut off my own teacher's head?" he asked, his voice breaking with emotion. The Buddha taught, "Hatred does not cease by hatred, but only by love. This is the eternal rule." This story reveals how authentic repentance transforms not only the person seeking redemption, but also those whose lives they touch. Why do we often doubt that genuine transformation is possible? Zen Buddhism points to our tendency to define ourselves and others by past actions rather than present possibilities. Zenkai's story demonstrates that while we cannot undo past harm, we can dedicate our remaining time to creating benefit that far outweighs the damage we caused. The tunnel represents what Zen calls great vow, commitment that transcends personal comfort or convenience. Unlike acts of penance performed to earn forgiveness, Zenkai's work arose from authentic remorse, coupled with genuine desire to serve. He wasn't trying to balance karmic scales, but responding to suffering with the only gift he could offer: 30 years of his life in service to others' safety. Consider how transformation works in your own experience. Perhaps you've carried guilt over harsh words spoken in anger, or choices that caused pain to people you loved. The conventional approach might involve apologies, promises to change, or attempts to make direct amends. While these have their place, Zenkai's story points to something deeper: the possibility of allowing our mistakes to break our hearts open, rather than simply burden us with shame. The young swordsman's transformation illustrates how authentic service can heal even the wounds of those we've harmed. He came seeking justice through violence, but discovered something more valuable: a teacher who showed him what dedicated service looks like. The man who killed his father ultimately gave him a model for living that no amount of revenge could have provided. This doesn't romanticize the original crime or suggest that Zenkai's service erased his responsibility. Rather, it shows how acknowledging the full weight of our actions can fuel commitment to creating benefit rather than just minimizing harm. The tunnel saved countless lives that the original killing had put at risk. But this wasn't calculated restitution. It was love expressing itself through whatever means were available. Zen Master Dogen taught, "To study the Buddha way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be actualized by myriad things." Zenkai's 30-year labor was a forgetting of self, not through denial of responsibility, but through complete dedication to something larger than his personal redemption. The physical demands of the tunnel work, the scarred hands, bent back, and decades of isolation mirror the internal process of working through deep remorse. Transformation often requires this kind of sustained effort over years rather than sudden breakthrough. Each strike of Zenkai's chisel against rock was both practical progress and spiritual practice. The story's climax reveals the ultimate teaching. Authentic service transforms the servant as much as it benefits others. The man who began digging as a criminal seeking to atone had become someone worthy of respect and love, not because his past was erased, but because he had allowed that past to fuel 30 years of selfless action. The Buddha said, "Drop by drop is the water pot filled. Likewise, the wise one, gathering it little by little, fills oneself with good." Zenkai's tunnel was built one strike at a time, just as his character was rebuilt one day of service at a time. Neither happened quickly, but both created something that would benefit countless people for generations. Tonight, as you reflect on areas where you might carry guilt or regret, can you sense the possibility of transformation through service? Can you imagine how your own mistakes might become the fuel for creating something beneficial rather than just the source of ongoing self-punishment? As Zenkai discovered, sometimes the heaviest burdens can become the foundation for the most meaningful contributions. Now, let us explore a story about the difference between surface judgments and deeper motivations, and how wisdom often appears in forms that conventional thinking cannot recognize. This is the story of Geshen, the monk who was called the stingy artist. In a mountain monastery where morning mist clung to ancient pine trees, lived Geshen, a monk whose artistic talent was renowned throughout the region. His brush could capture the essence of a bird in flight with just a few elegant strokes, and his paintings of mountain landscapes seemed to breathe with spiritual presence. Yet despite living in a religious community dedicated to non-attachment, Geshen had earned an unusual reputation that puzzled and sometimes scandalized those who knew him. Before beginning any artwork, Geshen always insisted on being paid in advance, and his fees were remarkably high. Unlike other monk artists who might paint for the joy of creation or as offerings to the temple, Geshen approached his art like a merchant, calculating costs and demanding premium prices. This behavior earned him the nickname, the stingy artist, and many people whispered that his monastic vows had been corrupted by greed. One evening, a beautiful geisha from the nearby pleasure district approached Geshen with a commission. She moved with the refined grace of someone trained in the arts of entertainment, her silk kimono rustling softly as she bowed before the monk artist. "Master Geshen," she said respectfully, "I would like you to create a painting for me." Without hesitation, Geshen asked the question that had become his trademark. "How much can you pay?" The geisha smiled mysteriously. "Whatever you charge, but I have one unusual request. I want you to do the work in front of me while I am entertaining my patron." Geshen agreed, and several days later, he was summoned to the geisha's house. She was hosting an elaborate feast for a wealthy merchant who regularly sought her company. The room was filled with the finest delicacies, expensive sake, and the soft glow of paper lanterns. Musicians played in the background, while the geisha entertained her guest with witty conversation and graceful dance. In this atmosphere of luxury and sensual pleasure, Gesson calmly set up his materials and began to paint. His brush moved with confident precision, creating an image of exquisite beauty, while the feast continued around him. He appeared completely focused on his work, unmoved by the extravagant surroundings or the intimate atmosphere between the geisha and her patron. When the painting was completed, Gesson named his price, the highest sum he had ever charged. The geisha paid without protest, but as she handed him the money, she turned to her patron with a knowing look. "Look at this artist," she said, her voice carrying a note of theatrical disdain. "All he wants is money. His paintings are technically excellent, but his mind is dirty. Money has caused it to become muddy. Work drawn by such a filthy mind is not fit to be displayed anywhere respectable. It's just about good enough for one of my petticoats." With deliberate theatricality, she removed her silk undergarment and handed it to Gesson. "Paint another picture on the back of this," she commanded, "since your work is only suited for underclothing anyway." The patron laughed at what he perceived as a clever insult to the money-obsessed monk. He expected Gesson to be embarrassed or offended by such treatment, but Gesson simply looked at the silk garment and asked, without any change in expression, "How much will you pay?" "Oh, any amount," the geisha replied, curious to see how far she could push this apparently greedy monk. Gesson named an even more outrageous price, which the geisha paid. He then painted on her petticoat with the same careful attention he had given to the formal commission, completed his work, collected his payment, and departed without showing any sign of embarrassment or anger. Years later, after Gesson had disappeared from the region, the truth about his apparent greed was finally revealed. Throughout his career as the stingy artist, he had been secretly pursuing 3 compassionate goals that required substantial funding. First, his province was regularly devastated by famines that left poor families starving while wealthy landowners hoarded grain. Gesson had quietly established a secret warehouse that he kept filled with rice and other essentials, ready to distribute during emergencies. His greed had been feeding the hungry for decades. Second, the road from his village to the national shrine was in terrible condition, causing injury and hardship to countless pilgrims. Gesson had been saving money to build a proper road that would serve travelers for generations. Third, his beloved teacher had died before fulfilling his dream of building a temple. Gesson had resolved to honor his teacher's memory by completing this sacred project. After accomplishing these 3 wishes through his art sales, Gesson threw away his brushes and materials, retired to the mountains, and never painted again. The stingy artist had been revealed as one of the most generous men in the province. The Buddha taught, "Do not believe in anything simply because you have heard it. Do not believe in anything simply because it is spoken and rumored by many." This story reveals how easily we misjudge others when we base our assessments on surface appearances rather than deeper understanding. Why do we so readily judge others by their external behavior? Zen Buddhism points to what might be called surface mind, our tendency to create complete narratives about people based on limited observations. The geisha, her patron, and the community all saw Gesson's insistence on payment and concluded his mind was corrupted by greed, never investigating deeper motivations. The geisha's theatrical humiliation of Gesson represents how society often punishes those who violate conventional expectations, even when that violation serves a higher purpose. She and her patron felt justified in their mockery because Gessen's behavior seemed to contradict proper monastic conduct. But Gessen's calm acceptance of even the most insulting treatment reveals someone operating from a completely different framework. He wasn't attached to social approval or concerned with maintaining his reputation. His only concern was raising funds for his 3 projects, and if that meant painting on undergarments while being ridiculed, he was willing to accept such conditions. Consider how often we make similar misjudgments in daily life. Perhaps we criticize a colleague for working long hours, assuming they're ambitious and selfish, without knowing they're supporting elderly parents. Maybe we judge someone for driving an expensive car, not realizing they use it for volunteer work that requires reliable transportation. Our quick assessments often miss the fuller picture of others' circumstances and motivations. The story also reveals the difference between conventional morality and deeper wisdom. Conventional thinking says monks should be detached from money, should give their services freely, should maintain dignified behavior in all circumstances. But Gessen's apparent violations of these norms were actually expressions of profound compassion, operating on a longer timeline than most people could perceive. Zen teacher Linji said, "There is nothing special to do. Just be ordinary. Relieve yourself, wash your face, put on your clothes and eat your food. When tired, sleep." Gessen embodied this teaching by approaching his fundraising with the same calm practicality he brought to painting. There was no drama, no explanation, no defense, just systematic work toward compassionate goals. The 3 projects Gessen funded represent different aspects of service: immediate relief for suffering, feeding the hungry, infrastructure that serves many people over time, building the road, and honoring spiritual lineage, completing his teacher's temple. His approach integrated practical compassion with spiritual devotion in a way that transcended conventional categories. The revelation of Gessen's true motivations doesn't make him a hero so much as it reveals the limitations of judging anyone based on partial information. How many people in our own lives might be carrying out similar hidden acts of service while appearing to violate social expectations? Gessen's retirement after completing his 3 goals shows the difference between attachment to artistic identity and using artistic skill as a tool for service. Once his paintings had served their purpose of generating funds for compassion, he had no need to continue creating them. His identity was never tied to being an artist. It was tied to being of service. The Buddha said, "Thousands of candles can be lighted from a single candle, and the life of the candle will not be shortened. Happiness never decreases by being shared." Gessen's secret warehouse, road project, and temple were all ways of lighting candles that would continue benefiting people long after he was gone. Tonight, as you consider the judgments you might hold about others' behavior, can you sense the possibility that motivations might be more complex than they appear? Can you hold space for the mystery of what drives people's choices, rather than rushing to condemn what doesn't immediately make sense? As Gessen showed, sometimes the most generous hearts hide behind the most puzzling behaviors. Now, from the halls of scholarly debate, where words carry weight and misunderstanding breeds comedy, comes a story about the nature of communication itself. This is the story of the one-eyed monk and the traveling debater. In a remote temple, nestled among snow-capped mountains in northern Japan, 2 brother monks had made their home together. The temple followed an ancient tradition. Any wandering monk could request shelter, but only if he could win a theological debate with the resident monks. This practice ensured that only those with deep understanding of Buddhist teachings would be granted lodging, while also providing intellectual stimulation for the isolated community. The elder brother was renowned for his scholarship, having spent decades studying the most complex philosophical texts. His mind was sharp as a sword, capable of dissecting the finest points of doctrine and engaging in debates that could last from sunset to sunrise. The younger brother, however, was considered simple-minded by most standards. He had lost one eye in an accident years earlier, and his understanding of Buddhist philosophy seemed as limited as his physical vision. One snowy evening, a traveling monk arrived seeking shelter. Following proper protocol, he formally requested the traditional debate about Buddhist teachings. The elder brother, exhausted from a long day of intensive study, felt too tired to engage in the rigorous intellectual combat that such debates required. "Brother," he said to the younger monk, "please take my place tonight. But remember, conduct the dialogue in silence. Let wisdom speak through gesture rather than words." The younger monk, though nervous about representing the temple's reputation, agreed to fulfill this responsibility. The two monks, the confident traveler and the anxious resident, made their way to the shrine room and sat facing each other in the flickering candlelight. What followed was a brief, wordless exchange that would be interpreted very differently by each participant. The traveling monk, eager to demonstrate his understanding, began by holding up one finger with ceremonial gravity. The younger monk, after a moment's consideration, held up 2 fingers in response. The visitor then raised 3 fingers, maintaining the solemn dignity appropriate to theological discourse. At this point, the younger monk's face flushed with anger, and he shook his clenched fist directly in front of the stranger's face. Startled by this aggressive gesture, the traveling monk immediately rose and hurried to find the elder brother. "Your young brother is a remarkable fellow," he announced with genuine admiration. "He defeated me completely. I have no choice but to continue my journey tonight, despite the snow." The elder brother, surprised that his simple younger brother had succeeded where he might have struggled, asked for details of the exchange. "The debate was profound," the traveler explained enthusiastically. "First, I held up one finger to represent Buddha, the enlightened one. Your brother immediately responded by holding up 2 fingers, signifying Buddha and his teaching, showing that enlightenment cannot be separated from the Dharma that expresses it." He continued with growing excitement. "I then held up 3 fingers, representing Buddha, his teaching, and the Sangha, the community of followers living in harmony with these principles. But your brother's response was magnificent. He shook his clenched fist at me, indicating that all 3, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, arise from one unified realization. His understanding is so deep that he demolished my argument completely. I am honored to have encountered such wisdom." With these words, the traveling monk gathered his belongings and departed into the snowy night, convinced he had met a master of silent Buddhist discourse. Meanwhile, the younger monk came running into the main hall, his face still red with indignation. "Where is that fellow?" he demanded angrily. "I'm going to give him the beating he deserves." The elder brother, puzzled by this reaction, said gently, "I understand you won the debate. The traveling monk left speaking of your profound wisdom." "Won nothing!" the younger monk exploded. "I'm going to beat him up if I can catch him." "Please, tell me what happened during your dialogue," the elder brother requested, trying to understand the source of his brother's fury. "The arrogant fool insulted me the moment he saw me," the younger monk exclaimed. He held up one finger, making fun of the fact that I have only one eye. Since he was a stranger and a guest, I thought I should be polite, so I held up two fingers, congratulating him on having two good eyes. His voice grew more agitated as he continued. But then the rude wretch held up three fingers, suggesting that between the two of us, we only have three eyes total. That was too much. I got ready to punch him for such impolite behavior, but the coward ran away before I could teach him proper manners. The Buddha taught, "We are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts. With our thoughts, we make the world." This story reveals how completely our internal perspectives shape our interpretation of external events. Why do two people witness the same events, yet create entirely different meanings? Zen Buddhism points to what might be called projection mind, our tendency to interpret others' actions through the lens of our own concerns, fears, and preoccupations. The traveling monk saw philosophical discourse, where the younger monk saw personal insults, yet both were responding to identical gestures. The traveling monk's interpretation was shaped by his scholarly training and expectation of theological debate. Every gesture became laden with doctrinal significance because that's the framework he brought to the encounter. His mind was primed to see wisdom and enlightenment, so that's exactly what he discovered in the younger monk's responses. The younger monk's interpretation was shaped by his self-consciousness about his physical disability and his assumption that others would notice and comment on his missing eye. His mind was primed to detect mockery and insult, so that's precisely what he found in the stranger's gestures. Consider how this dynamic operates in your own daily interactions. Perhaps a colleague doesn't return your greeting, and you interpret this as rudeness or dismissal, not knowing they're preoccupied with a family crisis. Maybe someone cancels plans at the last minute, and you assume they don't value your friendship, unaware they're dealing with sudden work pressures. The elder brother's role in this story represents the possibility of stepping back from our immediate interpretations to examine how perspective shapes perception. His gentle questioning revealed the complete disconnect between the two participants' experiences of the same event. The humor in this story isn't just comedic relief. It points to something profound about the nature of communication itself. Even when people share the same language, culture, and basic context, their internal worlds can be so different that meaningful exchange becomes nearly impossible without great care and awareness. Zen teacher Huangpo said, "The foolish reject what they see, not what they think. The wise reject what they think, not what they see." Both monks in this debate were rejecting what they actually saw, simple gestures, in favor of what they thought, complex interpretations based on their own mental frameworks. The story also reveals how our expectations create self-fulfilling prophecies. The traveling monk expected to encounter wisdom and therefore experienced the exchange as profound teaching. The younger monk expected to be mocked and therefore experienced the same gestures as deliberate insults. Neither was entirely wrong within their own interpretive framework. This doesn't lead to complete relativism. Some interpretations are more accurate than others, but it does point to the importance of questioning our immediate assumptions about others' motivations and meanings. The silent dialogue could have been resolved with a simple spoken question. "What do you mean by holding up that finger?" The Buddha said, "Believe nothing, no matter where you read it or who said it, no matter if I have said it, unless it agrees with your own reason and your own common sense." This teaching applies not just to spiritual doctrines, but to our moment-to-moment interpretations of other people's behavior. The younger monk's physical disability became a lens through which he interpreted everything, just as the traveling monk's scholarly training became his interpretive lens. We all carry such lenses, our past experiences, current concerns, and unconscious assumptions that color our perception of reality. The traveling monk's departure into the snowy night, convinced he had encountered profound wisdom, while the younger monk remained behind, convinced he had been insulted, perfectly captures the human comedy of misunderstanding. Both went away with their worldviews confirmed, neither having actually communicated with the other. Tonight, as you reflect on recent interactions that might have left you confused, hurt, or frustrated, can you sense the possibility that different interpretations might be equally valid? Can you hold space for the mystery of what others actually mean, rather than assuming your first interpretation is correct? As this story shows, sometimes the most profound misunderstandings arise not from malice, but from the simple fact that we each live in our own private world of meaning, rarely checking whether others share our interpretations of what seems obvious to us. As we continue our journey through the wisdom of Zen Buddhism, let us explore a story about the transformative power of unconditional kindness and how genuine care dissolves shame more effectively than punishment ever could. This is the story of the Midnight Wanderer and his master's unexpected response. In a mountain temple where the sound of evening bells marked the rhythm of disciplined spiritual life, Master Sengai taught meditation to a devoted group of students. The monastery followed ancient routines: early morning sitting, communal meals eaten in silence, work practice in the gardens, and evening Dharma talks before retiring to simple sleeping quarters. Most students found deep satisfaction in this structured existence, but human nature being what it is, not everyone was equally committed to the monastic schedule. Among Sengai's pupils was a young man who struggled with the temple's strict boundaries. During the day, he participated fully in all activities, sitting zazen with apparent dedication and performing his assigned duties without complaint. But as night fell and the temple settled into peaceful silence, restlessness would arise in his heart like a tide he couldn't resist. The young monk had discovered that by using a high wooden stool, he could climb over the temple wall and escape into the nearby town. There, in the pleasure quarters filled with bright lanterns and lively music, he could forget the weight of spiritual discipline and lose himself in worldly entertainment. He told himself these midnight excursions were harmless, just brief respites from the intensity of monastic life. Night after night, the pattern repeated. After the evening meditation ended and his fellow students retired to their quarters, he would wait until the temple was completely quiet, then carefully position the stool against the wall, climb over, and slip away into the darkness. He always returned before dawn prayers, replacing the stool and settling into his sleeping mat as if he had never left. Master Sengai, however, possessed the keen awareness that comes from decades of observing human behavior. During one of his regular evening inspections of the dormitory, he noticed the young monk's absence and quickly discovered the telltale stool positioned against the temple wall. Understanding immediately what was happening, Sengai quietly removed the stool and took its place, standing motionlessly in the shadows. Hours later, the wayward student returned from his night of pleasure, his mind still buzzing with wine and entertainment, but beginning to feel the familiar weight of guilt and anxiety about his secret behavior. In the darkness, he couldn't see that anything had changed. Assuming the stool was exactly where he had left it, he reached up to climb back over the wall. Without hesitation, he placed his feet on what he thought was the wooden stool and jumped down into the temple grounds. Only when he landed did he realize with horror that he had stepped on his master's head and shoulders. Sengai had served as a human stepping stool, absorbing the impact of his student's descent with patient silence. The young monk stood frozen in shock and shame, expecting the fierce rebuke he knew he deserved. He had been caught red-handed in his deception, had literally trampled on his teacher's dignity, and had violated the trust placed in him as a student of the Dharma. But Sengai's response was unlike anything the young man could have anticipated. Rising slowly and brushing the dust from his robes, the master looked at his student with eyes full of gentle concern. "It is very chilly in the early morning," Sengai said softly. "Do be careful not to catch cold yourself." With these words, he walked quietly back toward his quarters, leaving the young monk standing alone in the moonlit courtyard, tears streaming down his face. From that night forward, the student never again climbed over the temple wall. His midnight wanderings ended not because he had been punished or threatened, but because he had encountered a love so complete and unconditional that it dissolved his need to escape. The Buddha taught, "Hatred is never appeased by hatred in this world. By non-hatred alone is hatred appeased. This is a law eternal." Sengai's response demonstrates how compassion can accomplish what punishment never could: genuine transformation from within. Why do we often believe that wrongdoing must be met with consequences to prevent its repetition? Zen Buddhism points to our deep conditioning around justice and retribution, the belief that people only change behavior when faced with unpleasant results. But this story reveals a different possibility, that shame dissolves naturally in the presence of unconditional acceptance. The young monk's midnight excursions represented what we might call spiritual claustrophobia, the feeling of being trapped by ideals we aspire to but haven't yet fully embodied. Rather than acknowledging this struggle openly, he created a secret life that allowed him to release pressure while maintaining his public image as a dedicated student. Consider how often we create similar double lives in our own experience. Perhaps we present ourselves as patient parents while secretly feeling overwhelmed and resentful. Maybe we maintain an image of confidence at work while privately struggling with imposter syndrome. These split existences arise when we believe our authentic struggles are unacceptable to those we respect. Sengai's decision to become the stool rather than catch the student in the act reveals profound wisdom about human psychology. By allowing himself to be literally stepped upon, he demonstrated that his student's welfare mattered more than his own dignity or authority. This wasn't passive martyrdom, but active compassion, using his own body to provide the support his student needed. The master's gentle words about catching cold show how true teachers focus on care rather than correction. Instead of addressing the rule-breaking, the deception, or the disrespect, Sengai expressed concern for his students' physical well-being. This response cut through all the young monk's defensive strategies and reached directly into his heart. The immediate and permanent transformation that followed illustrates how shame heals in the presence of unconditional love. The student's midnight escapes weren't really about pleasure. They were about feeling trapped and judged. When he encountered acceptance instead of judgment, the need to escape simply evaporated. Zen teacher Suzuki Roshi said, "In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind, there are few. Sengai maintained beginner's mind about his students' behavior, staying open to responding with love rather than defaulting to conventional discipline. This doesn't mean that boundaries and consequences are never appropriate. Rather, it suggests that our first response to others' mistakes might be curiosity about their underlying needs rather than immediate correction of their surface behavior. The young monk's actions were symptomatic of something deeper, a struggle with the intensity of spiritual practice that many students experience but few dare to discuss. Modern psychology confirms what Sengai understood intuitively. Shame rarely motivates lasting positive change. When people feel fundamentally accepted despite their mistakes, they become capable of honest self-reflection and genuine transformation. When they feel judged or rejected, they typically become more defensive and secretive. The master's willingness to literally support his students' transgression, serving as the stool that enabled the rule-breaking, demonstrates how unconditional love sometimes means helping people through their mistakes rather than preventing them. Sengai understood that his student needed to complete this particular journey of rebellion in order to discover its ultimate emptiness. The image of the respected teacher standing silently in place of a wooden stool captures something essential about genuine spiritual authority. Real power lies not in controlling others' behavior, but in remaining so centered in love that external circumstances cannot disturb our fundamental commitment to others' well-being. The Buddha said, "Teach this triple truth to all. A generous heart, kind speech, and a life of service and compassion are the things which renew humanity." Sengai's response embodied all three. His generous heart that absorbed the physical impact, his kind speech that expressed care rather than criticism, and his life of service that put his students' needs above his own comfort. The young monk's tears and immediate transformation weren't results of guilt or fear, but of recognition. He had encountered the very love he had been seeking in the pleasure quarters. His midnight excursions had been unconscious attempts to find acceptance and understanding, which he discovered were available right where he was, in the heart of his teacher's unlimited compassion. Tonight, as you reflect on areas where you might judge yourself or others harshly for human imperfections, can you sense the possibility of Sengai's response? Can you imagine meeting mistakes with curiosity rather than criticism, offering support rather than correction? As this story shows, sometimes the most profound teaching happens not through words or rules, but through the simple presence of unconditional love that melts resistance and opens hearts to genuine transformation. Our 11th story, the letter that points beyond death. Across the bridge between life and death, where fear meets wisdom and mortality reveals immortality, unfolds our next teaching about our essential nature. This is the story of Master Basui's letter to a dying disciple. In a small temple nestled among cherry trees that had witnessed countless seasons of blooming and falling, Master Basui had guided many students through the complexities of Zen practice. His teaching was known for its directness, cutting through conceptual elaborations to point students toward immediate recognition of their essential nature. Among his many devoted disciples was one who had practiced with particular sincerity for many years, attending every teaching, sitting through countless meditation sessions, and gradually deepening his understanding of the Dharma. But now this faithful student lay dying, his body ravaged by illness that no medicine could cure. As his condition worsened, word reached Master Basui that his disciple was struggling not just with physical pain, but with the fundamental terror that haunts all human beings when facing the dissolution of everything they have known as themselves. Understanding that this was perhaps the most crucial teaching moment in his student's life, Basui took brush and paper to compose what would become one of the most profound letters in Zen literature. He wrote with the care of someone addressing the deepest possible human need, the need to understand what remains when everything we think we are falls away. "My dear friend," the letter began, "I know you are facing the great transition, and I write to remind you of what you have always known, but perhaps forgotten in your current distress." Basui continued with words that cut through the fever dreams and physical suffering to the bedrock of reality. "The essence of your mind is not born, so it will never die. It is not an existence, which is perishable. It is not an emptiness, which is a mere void. It has neither color nor form. It enjoys no pleasures and suffers no pains." The master knew his student's mind would be clouded with pain and fear, so he chose his words carefully, each sentence designed to redirect attention away from the body's distress toward the unchanging awareness that observes all experiences. "I know you are very ill," he acknowledged, not dismissing the reality of his student's suffering, but placing it in a larger context. "Like a good Zen student, you are facing that sickness squarely. You may not know exactly who is suffering, but question yourself. What is the essence of this mind? Think only of this. You will need no more." Basui understood that in the face of death, the mind desperately grasps for anything that might provide security or continuation. Knowing this tendency, he advised his dying disciple, "Covet nothing. Your end, which is endless, is as a snowflake dissolving in the pure air." This final image, a snowflake returning to the vast sky from which it emerged, pointed to the ultimate teaching that death is not annihilation, but recognition. Just as a snowflake doesn't cease to exist when it melts, but returns to its original nature, as water, consciousness doesn't disappear at death, but reveals its essential nature as boundless awareness. When the letter reached the dying monk, those attending him noticed an immediate change. The anxiety that had gripped him for weeks began to dissolve. His breathing, which had been labored and fearful, became peaceful. In his final days, instead of fighting against his condition, he turned his attention to the essential question his teacher had posed. What is the essence of this mind? In his last conscious moments, witnesses reported that his face radiated a peace so profound it seemed to transform the very atmosphere of the room. He died, as Basui had suggested, like a snowflake, dissolving into pure air, with no resistance, no fear, only recognition of what had always been true. The Buddha taught, of all meditations, that on death is supreme. Basui's letter demonstrates how facing our mortality can become the gateway to understanding our immortal nature. Why do we fear death so intensely, and how can this fear be transformed into wisdom? Zen Buddhism points to our fundamental misidentification with the body and personality as our true self. When we believe we are only this collection of thoughts, memories, and physical sensations, death appears as total annihilation. But when we recognize our essential nature as pure awareness, death becomes simply another experience arising within our unchanging essence. The letter's opening teaching, "The essence of your mind is not born, so it will never die," points to what Zen calls original face or Buddha nature. This isn't a philosophical concept, but a direct recognition available in every moment. The awareness reading these words right now wasn't born when your body emerged from the womb and won't die when your body returns to the earth. Consider what changes and what remains constant in your own experience. Your body has completely replaced every cell multiple times since childhood, yet something maintains continuity. Your thoughts and emotions flow like weather patterns, yet something observes all these changes without being altered by them. Your memories fade and shift, yet something remains present through all transformations. Basui's instruction to question yourself, what is the essence of this mind, wasn't meant as intellectual analysis, but as direct investigation. In the face of death, when all conceptual supports fall away, this becomes the only relevant inquiry, not how can I survive or what will happen to me, but what am I essentially? The teaching that this essence enjoys no pleasures and suffers no pains doesn't deny the reality of human experience, but points to its temporary nature. Pain and pleasure arise within awareness like waves on the ocean's surface, but they don't fundamentally disturb the ocean's depths. Similarly, even intense physical or emotional experiences don't touch our essential nature. Modern hospice workers often observe that people who can relax their resistance to dying frequently experience profound peace in their final moments. This isn't resignation, but recognition. The discovery that what they feared losing was never who they truly were. The personality dissolves, but something essential remains untouched. The image of the snowflake dissolving in pure air captures this mystery perfectly. A snowflake appears to be a separate, individual thing, but it's actually a temporary formation of the very air and moisture that surround it. When conditions change, it doesn't go somewhere else. It returns to its original nature. Death may be similar, not a journey to somewhere else, but a recognition of what we've always been. Basui's advice to covet nothing addresses the desperate grasping that often intensifies as death approaches. The dying mind may cling to relationships, accomplishments, or even spiritual experiences, trying to take something solid across the threshold. But all forms of grasping create suffering because they're based on the false assumption that we're separate from what we're trying to hold on to. The letter's profound compassion lies not in offering false comfort or elaborate explanations about afterlife, but in pointing directly to what can be verified in immediate experience. Even in the midst of illness and fear, the awareness that recognizes these states remains untouched by them. Zen teacher Dogen wrote, "To study the Buddha way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be actualized by myriad things." The dying process can become the ultimate opportunity for this forgetting, letting go of all identification with the limited self to discover our essential nature as boundless awareness. The Buddha said, "Everything is changeable. Everything appears and disappears. There is no blissful peace until one passes beyond the agony of life and death." Basui's letter showed his students how to find this peace, not by escaping life and death, but by recognizing what remains unchanged through both. Tonight, as you rest in the awareness that witnesses all your experiences, thoughts, sensations, dreams, can you sense something of what Basui pointed to? Can you recognize the deathless essence that observes even the fear of death? As his letter revealed, our deepest peace comes not from guarantees about survival, but from discovering what we essentially are, the very awareness in which all experiences, including birth and death, arise and dissolve like snowflakes in the infinite sky of consciousness. Now let us explore a Zen story about priorities. This is the story of Tetsugen and his invisible sutras. In the mountains of Japan, where mist clung to ancient temples and the sound of woodpeckers echoed through silent forests, lived a monk named Tetsugen, whose heart burned with a singular mission. During his era, the precious teachings of the Buddha, the sutras that contained centuries of accumulated wisdom, were available only in Chinese characters that most Japanese people could not read. Tetsugen envisioned a great project, translating and printing these sacred texts in an edition that would make Buddha's teachings accessible to his people for generations to come. This was an almost impossibly ambitious undertaking. 7,000 copies were to be printed using wooden blocks, each one hand-carved with meticulous precision. The cost would be enormous, requiring donations from across the country. But Tetsugen's dedication to preserving and sharing the Dharma gave him the determination to begin this monumental task. He set out on foot, traveling from village to village, temple to temple, carrying nothing but his monk's bowl and an unwavering faith in his mission. In wealthy districts, sympathetic benefactors might donate 100 pieces of gold, understanding the value of making Buddhist teachings widely available. But most of his support came from poor farmers and merchants who could spare only a few small coins from their meager earnings. Tetsugen received each donation, whether gold or copper, large or tiny, with identical gratitude. He bowed just as deeply to the wealthy patron who gave a fortune as to the peasant who offered a single coin. For 10 patient years, he walked the dusty roads and mountain paths, gradually accumulating the funds needed for his great project. Finally, after a decade of tireless effort, Tetsugen had collected enough money to begin printing the sutras. The carved wooden blocks were ordered, skilled craftsmen were engaged, and the long-awaited work was about to commence. But just as he prepared to fulfill his dream, disaster struck the region. The Uji River, swollen by unprecedented rains, burst its banks and flooded vast areas of farmland. Crops were destroyed, homes were swept away, and thousands of people faced starvation in the famine that followed. Tetsugen looked at the money he had spent 10 years collecting, funds that could feed the hungry and save lives, and made a decision that stunned those who knew of his dedication to the Sutra project. Without hesitation, he spent every coin on rice and relief supplies for the flood victims. The dream of printing the sutras was abandoned as completely as if it had never existed. Tetsugen distributed food to starving families, helped rebuild destroyed homes, and used his accumulated funds to preserve life rather than create books. When the immediate crisis passed, Tetsugen quietly began collecting donations again. His determination to publish the sutras remained unshaken, but now he started from nothing once more. For several more years, he walked the same roads, visited the same temples, and gradually rebuilt his fund. People who had supported him before continued their contributions, understanding that this monk's priorities were correct, even if his project was repeatedly delayed. Just as Tetsugen was again approaching the amount needed for printing, another catastrophe struck. A terrible epidemic swept across Japan, claiming thousands of lives and leaving countless families destitute. Once again, Tetsugen faced the same choice: preserve his carefully accumulated funds for the spiritual monument he envisioned, or use the money to address immediate human suffering. Once again, he chose compassion over completion. Every coin collected over years of patient effort was spent on medicine, food, and care for the sick and dying. His second collection for the sutras disappeared as completely as the first, dissolved into acts of immediate mercy that saved lives but left no permanent record. For the third time, Tetsugen began the long process of gathering donations. By now, his reputation for placing human need above personal projects had spread throughout the region. People understood they were supporting not just a scholarly endeavor, but a monk whose wisdom expressed itself through action rather than words. Some donors gave specifically because they knew their contributions might be redirected towards saving lives if circumstances required. 20 years after beginning his mission, Tetsugen finally succeeded in printing the sutras. The wooden blocks were carved, the 7,000 copies were printed, and the Buddhist teachings became widely available in readable Japanese text. The physical books could be held, studied, and passed down through generations. The printing blocks themselves were preserved in the Obaku Monastery in Kyoto, where visitors could see the tangible result of decades of dedicated effort. But the Japanese people, with the wisdom that comes from witnessing true priorities in action, tell their children a different story about Tetsugen's accomplishment. They say he actually created 3 complete sets of sutras, and that the first 2 invisible editions, the hungry fed and the sick healed, surpass even the magnificence of the printed books that can be seen and touched. The Buddha taught, if you truly loved yourself, you would never harm yourself through bad acts. If you truly loved yourself, you would never harm another, because that other is part of yourself. Tetsugen's story reveals how genuine wisdom expresses itself through response to immediate need, rather than attachment to long-term projects. Why is it so difficult to choose immediate compassion over cherished plans? Zen Buddhism points to our attachment to outcomes and our tendency to prioritize the permanent over the temporary. We want to create things that will last, monuments that will outlive us, achievements that will be remembered. But Tetsugen's invisible sutras teach us that the most profound creations may be acts of service that leave no trace except in the lives they touch. Consider how this teaching applies to daily choices between personal goals and opportunities to serve. Perhaps you've been saving money for something special when a friend faces financial crisis. Maybe you've planned a perfect evening when your child needs unexpected attention. These moments test whether our spiritual understanding translates into spontaneous compassion. Tetsugen's identical gratitude for large and small donations reveals someone who understood that the act of giving matters more than the amount given. His decade of patient collecting wasn't just fundraising. It was a form of meditation on interdependence, recognizing that his project required the support of countless individuals, each making small sacrifices. The story's power lies in its demonstration that true dedication sometimes requires abandoning what we're dedicated to. Lesser commitment might have rationalized preserving the funds. I can't help everyone, and these books will benefit countless future readers. But Tetsugen's understanding ran deeper. He recognized that the essence of Buddha's teaching is compassion in action, not preservation of texts about compassion. This doesn't diminish the value of the printed sutras, which indeed served countless people over generations. Rather, it reveals the hierarchy of values that guided Tetsugen's choices. When faced with conflict between abstract good and immediate need, he consistently chose the concrete opportunity to alleviate suffering. The metaphor of invisible sutras suggests that some of our most important teachings are written not in books, but in acts of kindness that ripple through countless lives. The families Tetsugen fed during the famine carried forward lessons about generosity and care. The people he helped during the epidemic learned about sacrifice and service. These teachings were transmitted through experience rather than words, carved into hearts rather than wood. Modern life constantly presents similar choices between legacy projects and immediate service. We might be building businesses, writing books, or pursuing degrees while opportunities for direct help arise around us. Tetsugen's example suggests that true success might be measured not by what we complete, but by how readily we abandon our plans when life presents more urgent priorities. The preservation of Tetsugen's printing blocks at Obaku Monastery creates a beautiful paradox. The physical evidence of his eventual success is displayed alongside the story of his willingness to sacrifice that same success for human need. Visitors see both the achievement and the understanding that transcends achievement. Zen teacher Bankei said, "You must thoroughly understand that all beings are from the very beginning Buddha." Tetsugen's invisible sutras were expressions of this understanding, recognizing Buddha nature in starving farmers and sick villagers, then serving that recognition through immediate action rather than future benefit. The Buddha said, "Thousands of candles can be lighted from a single candle, and the life of the candle will not be shortened. Happiness never decreases by being shared." Tetsugen's 20-year journey demonstrates this principle. Each act of giving, whether coins donated to his project or relief distributed to victims, multiplied the light available in the world. Tonight, as you reflect on your own cherished projects and long-term goals, can you sense the wisdom of Tetsugen's priorities? Can you hold your plans lightly enough to abandon them when immediate opportunities for compassion arise? As his story reveals, sometimes our greatest accomplishments are invisible to others, but written permanently in the lives we touch through spontaneous kindness. The sutras that matter most may be the ones we create through acts of love that leave no trace except in the endless ripples of compassion they generate in the world. Let us now turn to a story about dignity, purpose, and the relationship between service and sustenance that transcends all concepts of retirement or earned rest. This is the story of Master Hyakujo and his unwavering commitment to useful work. In the mountains of China, where morning mist wound through terraced gardens and the sound of rakes on gravel marked the rhythm of monastery life, lived Master Hyakujo, a teacher whose wisdom was matched only by his dedication to physical labor. Even at the advanced age of 80, when most people would have long since retired to a life of contemplation and rest, this remarkable teacher could be found each day working alongside his students. His bent figure moved through the monastery grounds with surprising energy, trimming bushes with careful precision, sweeping pathways until they were spotless, and pruning fruit trees with the attention of someone who understood that each cut affected the tree's entire future. His weathered hands, marked by decades of such work, moved with the skill that comes only from treating every task as a form of meditation. The younger monks watched their elderly master with a mixture of admiration and concern. They could see how his movements had slowed over the years, how he occasionally paused to rest his back, how the tools seemed heavier in his aged hands. Their respect for him was boundless, but their compassion made them worry about his insistence on continuing such demanding physical work. "Master," they would say gently, "surely you have earned the right to rest. You have taught us well, and we are capable of maintaining the grounds ourselves. Please, allow us to serve you as you have served the Dharma all these years." But Hyakujo would smile and return to his work, seeming not to hear their well-intentioned suggestions. Day after day, this pattern continued, the students expressing concern, the master continuing his labor as if their words carried no weight at all. Finally, the disciples decided to take matters into their own hands. One evening, after Hyakujo had finished his daily work and retired to his quarters, they carefully gathered all his tools, his rake, his pruning shears, his broom, his hoe, and hid them away where they thought he would never find them. The next morning, when Hyakujo emerged for his usual routine, he discovered his tools were missing. He searched the places where he normally kept them, looked in the tool shed, checked the garden storage areas. Finding nothing, he sat quietly for a time, contemplating this unexpected development. That day, for the first time in decades, Hyakujo did not work in the gardens, and remarkably, he also did not eat. When meal times came, he remained in his quarters while the other monks gathered for their communal meals. The students assumed he was perhaps resting or engaged in special meditation practice. The second day brought the same pattern. Hyakujo searched briefly for his tools, found them still missing, and again abstained from both work and food. The disciples began to feel somewhat uneasy, but they told themselves their master would soon adapt to this enforced rest and begin eating normally again. By the third day, when Hyakujo had still not eaten a single meal, the students were growing genuinely alarmed. Their teacher was not a young man, and 3 days without food at his age could be dangerous. They gathered to discuss what they should do. "Perhaps he is angry with us for hiding his tools," one suggested thoughtfully. "He has never shown anger before," another replied, "but this behavior is certainly unusual." "Maybe this is his way of protesting our interference," offered a third. "We thought we were protecting him, but perhaps we have insulted his sense of purpose." As they debated, their concern deepened. Their master's health was more important than proving any point about work and rest. "We had better return his tools," they finally agreed. "Whatever message he is trying to convey, it is not worth risking his well-being." That afternoon, they quietly returned all the tools to their proper places. The next morning, Hyakujo discovered them exactly where they should be. Without any visible reaction to their mysterious disappearance and return, he picked up his rake and returned to his usual routine of maintaining the monastery grounds. That evening, he ate his meal with the same calm satisfaction he had always shown. After the meal was finished and the dishes cleared, he gathered his students around him for an evening teaching. "My dear disciples," he said with gentle authority, "I understand your concern for my welfare, and I appreciate the love that motivated your actions. But you must understand a fundamental principle that governs all of existence: no work, no food." He continued with the patient tone of someone explaining a natural law as basic as gravity. This is not a rule imposed by human convention or institutional policy. It is the very structure of reality itself. Every creature in nature understands this principle instinctively. The bird that does not search for food does not eat. The tree that does not extend its roots toward water does not drink. The person who does not contribute to the continuation of life does not deserve to partake in its sustenance. The students listened with growing understanding as their master elaborated. You see my age and think I have earned the right to be supported by others' efforts. But earning is not something that happens once and then entitles us to perpetual benefits. Earning happens fresh each day through whatever contribution we can make to the welfare of our community and the world. The Buddha taught, work out your salvation with diligence. Hyakujo's refusal to eat without working demonstrates how spiritual understanding expresses itself through engaged participation in life rather than withdrawal from responsibility. Why do we often assume that age, achievement, or wisdom should exempt us from useful labor? Zen Buddhism points to our misconceptions about the relationship between value and productivity, our tendency to view work as burden rather than opportunity for service. Hyakujo's story reveals work as a form of spiritual practice that maintains our connection to the fundamental rhythms of existence. The student's well-intentioned interference represents how misguided compassion can actually harm those we're trying to help. By attempting to spare their master from physical effort, they were unknowingly trying to separate him from what gave his life meaning and dignity. Their love was genuine, but their understanding was incomplete. Consider how this pattern shows up in your own relationships with aging parents, struggling friends, or anyone you perceive as needing protection from life's demands. Sometimes our desire to help actually diminishes others' sense of purpose and contribution. The most compassionate response might be finding ways for people to remain useful rather than assuming they need to be sheltered from responsibility. Hyakujo's principle of no work, no food doesn't advocate harsh capitalism or ignore legitimate needs for support. Rather, it points to the psychological and spiritual importance of feeling useful, of contributing something valuable to the continuation of life. Even when physical capacity diminishes, the human need to serve and create value remains essential to well-being. The Master's 3-day fast was not punishment or manipulation, but demonstration of a natural law he had discovered through decades of practice. When we lose our connection to useful work, whether through retirement, illness, or well-meaning protection, something vital dies within us. Food becomes mere consumption rather than the fuel that sustains our service. Modern research confirms what Hyakujo understood intuitively. People who maintain a sense of purpose and usefulness throughout their lives tend to live longer and experience better mental health than those who become passive recipients of care. The human spirit requires the dignity that comes from contributing rather than just consuming. This teaching applies beyond physical labor to any form of meaningful contribution. The work that earns our sustenance might be artistic creation, emotional support for others, intellectual contribution, or spiritual service. The key is maintaining active engagement with life rather than retreating into passivity. Zen teacher Dogen wrote, "To study the Buddha way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be actualized by myriad things." Hyakujo's daily labor was this forgetting of self, losing personal concerns in service to the monastery's needs and the larger rhythms of seasonal maintenance. The story also reveals the difference between chronological age and spiritual vitality. At 80, Hyakujo remained fully alive because he continued to engage with life's demands rather than withdrawing into the role of respected elder who deserves care without contribution. His physical frailty didn't exempt him from the universal requirement to earn his place through service. The student's hiding of the tools represents our broader cultural tendency to segregate people by age and capacity rather than finding ways for everyone to contribute according to their abilities. A more wise approach might have been helping their master find sustainable ways to continue working, rather than trying to eliminate work from his life entirely. The Buddha said, "Mindfulness is the path to the deathless. Heedlessness is the path to death." Hayakujo's insistence on daily work was a form of mindfulness, staying present to the needs around him, rather than becoming lost in concepts about what someone his age should or shouldn't do. Tonight, as you consider your own relationship to work and contribution, can you sense the wisdom in Hayakujo's unwavering commitment? Can you see how maintaining usefulness, whatever form it takes, preserves something essential to human dignity and spiritual vitality? As his story reveals, the most nourishing food is that which we earn through service, and the most meaningful rest is that which follows genuine contribution to the welfare of others. Let us continue on our journey. Our next story is about resourcefulness, acceptance, and how creative thinking can transform disaster into opportunity for deeper teaching. This is the story of young Ikkyu and the cup that was destined to die. In a mountain temple, where the morning light filtered through paper screens and cast gentle shadows on polished wooden floors, a remarkable young student named Ikkyu studied under a master known for his wisdom and his attachment to beautiful objects. Among the teacher's most prized possessions was an ancient teacup of extraordinary beauty and rarity, a piece so precious that it had been passed down through generations of tea masters, its delicate porcelain bearing the mark of a legendary craftsman from centuries past. Ikkyu, despite his youth, already showed signs of the penetrating intelligence that would later make him one of Zen's most famous masters. His mind worked in ways that often surprised his teacher and fellow students, finding unexpected connections between seemingly unrelated ideas and approaching problems from angles that others never considered. One afternoon, while his master was away attending to temple business, Ikkyu was quietly cleaning the tea room where the precious cup was displayed. The cup sat in a place of honor, surrounded by other beautiful objects that reflected the master's refined aesthetic taste. As Ikkyu carefully dusted the wooden shelf, his elbow accidentally knocked against the ancient treasure. Time seemed to slow as the cup fell toward the floor. Ikkyu watched in horror as the irreplaceable artifact struck the wooden boards and shattered into several pieces. Its centuries of perfect wholeness destroyed in an instant. The sound of breaking porcelain seemed to echo through the silent temple like a death knell. Ikkyu's heart pounded as he stared at the fragments scattered across the floor. This was not merely a broken object, but a piece of history, an artwork that could never be replaced or repaired. He knew his master treasured this cup above all his other possessions, often spending long minutes simply contemplating its perfect form and the skill of its long-dead creator. As the boy contemplated the magnitude of his accident, he heard the familiar sound of his master's footsteps approaching along the wooden corridor. There was no time to hide the evidence, no way to undo what had happened, no excuse that could make this disaster acceptable. In a moment of quick thinking born from desperation, Ikkyu gathered the fragments and concealed them behind his back just as his teacher entered the room. The master noticed immediately that something was amiss. Ikkyu's posture was unnaturally stiff. His expression carried an unusual tension, and there was something almost theatrical about the way he positioned himself in the center of the room. "Ikkyu," the master said gently, sensing his student's distress, "is everything well?" Instead of confessing immediately, Ikkyu looked up at his teacher with the serious expression of someone pondering life's deepest mysteries. "Master," he said with carefully studied innocence, "I have been thinking about something that troubles me greatly. Why do people have to die?" The master, touched by what he perceived as his young student's philosophical concern, set down his belongings and gave his full attention to this important question. "This is natural," he explained with the patient kindness of a teacher addressing a fundamental spiritual inquiry. "Everything that exists has to die and has just so long to live. This is the way of all things: birth, growth, decline, and death. Nothing in this world of forms can escape this cycle." "I see." Ikkyu nodded thoughtfully, as if his master's words were helping him understand something profound about the nature of existence. Then, with perfect timing, he produced the fragments of the shattered teacup from behind his back. "It was time for your cup to die," he announced matter-of-factly, presenting the pieces with the same ceremonial gravity his master might use when serving tea from that very cup. For a moment, the master stood in stunned silence, staring at the remains of his precious possession. Then, slowly, a smile began to spread across his face, growing into delighted laughter that filled the tea room with unexpected joy. In that instant, he recognized the brilliance of his student's response, not merely as a clever way to avoid punishment, but as a genuine teaching about impermanence that cuts straight to the heart of Buddhist understanding. The Buddha taught, all conditioned things are impermanent. When you see this, you are above sorrow. Ikkyu's response demonstrates how accepting impermanence can transform disaster into wisdom. Why do we suffer so much when precious things are lost or broken? Zen Buddhism points to our attachment to permanence in a world where everything is constantly changing. We invest objects with special meaning and then suffer when the natural process of decay and destruction touches them. Ikkyu's reframe helped his master see this attachment clearly. The young student's quick thinking reveals more than mere cleverness. It shows understanding of a fundamental spiritual principle. By connecting his accident to his master's own teaching about the universality of death, Ikkyu demonstrated that intellectual understanding means nothing unless we can apply it to immediate circumstances. Consider how often we accept spiritual teachings intellectually while remaining emotionally attached to their implications. We might agree that all things are impermanent while still feeling devastated when our car is damaged, our phone is lost, or our plans are disrupted. Ikkyu's response challenges this selective application of wisdom. The master's laughter reveals recognition of his own inconsistency. He could teach about impermanence and death when discussing abstract philosophy, but when faced with the actual destruction of something he valued, his initial reaction was likely shock and attachment. His student had shown him this blind spot with perfect directness. This story also illustrates how creative reframing can transform our relationship to unwanted events. Instead of seeing the broken cup as a tragedy requiring apology and shame, Ikkyu saw it as an opportunity to demonstrate understanding. The same facts, a precious object destroyed, became either disaster or teaching depending on the frame of interpretation. Modern psychology confirms what Ikkyu intuited. Our suffering comes not from events themselves, but from our interpretation of those events. A broken cup is just a broken cup until we add layers of meaning about loss, carelessness, disrespect, or irreplaceable value. When we change the story, we change the emotional impact. The timing of Ikkyu's approach was crucial. By asking about death before revealing the broken cup, he prepared his master's mind to receive the lesson he was about to demonstrate. This shows sophisticated understanding of how teaching works. not through force or argument, but through creating the right conditions for recognition. Zen teacher Huangpo said, "The foolish reject what they see, not what they think. The wise reject what they think, not what they see." The master initially thought his way into attachment to the cup's permanence, but Ikkyu helped him see the simple reality of its impermanent nature. The story doesn't diminish the cup's beauty or value, but places them in proper context. Precious things deserve appreciation and care, but they don't deserve the kind of attachment that creates suffering when they inevitably break, wear out, or disappear. True appreciation might actually increase when we fully accept impermanence. Ikkyu's response also demonstrates how accidents can become teachers. Instead of viewing his clumsiness as a mistake requiring cover-up, he saw it as an opportunity to explore how spiritual principles apply to real situations. This transforms every mishap into potential wisdom. The master's immediate laughter suggests he recognized something deeper than just clever excuse-making. He saw his student embodying the very teaching he had been trying to transmit, that accepting impermanence leads to freedom rather than sorrow. The broken cup became a more powerful teaching tool than it ever was as a perfect object. The Buddha said, "Pain is certain, suffering is optional." The cup's breaking was inevitable. If not today, then eventually. But suffering over its loss was a choice that could be transformed through right understanding. Ikkyu showed his master how to choose wisdom over sorrow. Tonight, as you consider areas where you might be clinging to things that are destined to change or end, can you find Ikkyu's wisdom? Can you see how accepting the timing of natural endings might bring peace rather than resistance? As this story reveals, sometimes our greatest losses become our deepest teachings when we have the creativity to see their perfect timing in the larger pattern of impermanence that governs all existence. Let us now turn to a tale about the different levels of spiritual development and how we relate to the challenges that promote our growth. This is the story of Master Getten's 3 types of disciples and the wisdom of embracing difficulty. In the latter part of the Tokugawa era, when Japan was emerging from centuries of isolation into contact with the wider world, Master Getten taught in a mountain monastery where students came to deepen their understanding of Zen. He was known for his precise observations about human nature and his ability to categorize the different approaches people brought to spiritual practice. Getten would often address his students with a teaching that was both humorous and cutting. "There are 3 kinds of disciples who come to study Zen," he would say, with a slight smile that suggested both compassion and amusement. "First, there are those who actually impart Zen to others. These are the ones who truly understand and can transmit what they have received. Second, there are those who maintain the temples and shrines, useful people who keep the tradition alive through their service and devotion." He would pause here, letting his students wonder into which category they might fall before delivering the final classification. And then there are the rice bags and the clothes hangers. This last description always brought nervous laughter from his audience, as each student secretly worried they might be among those who simply took up space, consuming resources without contributing understanding or genuine service. The rice bags and clothes hangers were those who went through the motions of practice without developing either deep realization or practical usefulness, spiritual consumers rather than contributors. One student who definitely did not fall into this third category was a remarkable young man named Gasan, who studied under the notoriously severe Master Tekisui. Tekisui's teaching methods were legendary for their harshness, and his demands on students were so extreme that most people quickly decided they were not suited for his particular form of instruction. Tekisui believed that spiritual development required breaking through the comfortable habits and mental patterns that keep people trapped in mediocrity. His approach was like a blacksmith's fire, intense heat applied with precise skill to transform raw metal into refined tools. Students who came to him expecting gentle encouragement and supportive guidance usually fled within days or weeks. The master would assign impossible tasks, criticize efforts that seemed perfectly adequate, and sometimes even resort to physical discipline when he sensed that a student was coasting on superficial understanding rather than pushing through to genuine breakthrough. His methods were designed to reveal whether someone had the inner strength necessary for real spiritual development or was merely seeking comfortable validation of their existing level of understanding. Most students couldn't tolerate this treatment for long. They would find reasons to leave, deciding that Tekisui was too harsh, that his methods were outdated, that they could learn better from a more compassionate teacher. They sought masters who would affirm their progress rather than constantly pointing out their limitations. But Gasan remained, despite enduring the full force of his teacher's uncompromising standards. When other students complained about Tekisui's severity and suggested that such treatment was unnecessarily harsh, Gasan would respond with insights that revealed his mature understanding of what spiritual training actually required. A poor disciple, he would explain patiently, utilizes a teacher's influence. By this, he meant students who came seeking to borrow authority or status from their association with a respected master. People who wanted to be seen as students of someone important rather than doing the hard work of actual development. A fair disciple, he continued, admires a teacher's kindness. These were students who appreciated supportive encouragement, but couldn't handle the challenging aspects of growth. They wanted their teacher to be like a doting parent who praised every effort rather than a skilled surgeon who cut precisely to heal deeper wounds. But a good disciple, Gasan concluded, grows strong under a teacher's discipline. This was someone who understood that the most valuable gifts a teacher can offer are not comfort and praise, but the kind of pressure that forces genuine development. Like a tree that grows strong by resisting wind, such students used challenging conditions to develop inner strength they never knew they possessed. The Buddha taught, "No one saves us but ourselves. No one can, and no one may. We ourselves must walk the path." Gasan's understanding of discipleship reveals how true students take responsibility for their own development rather than expecting teachers to make the path easy. Why do we often avoid teachers and situations that challenge us most deeply? Zen Buddhism points to our natural tendency to seek pleasure and avoid pain, even when pain might be exactly what promotes our growth. We want spiritual development to feel good, to affirm our existing strengths, rather than reveal our hidden weaknesses. The three types of disciples represent three different relationships to spiritual practice. The first type, those who can transmit Zen to others, have developed genuine understanding that enables them to serve as teachers themselves. They have moved beyond receiving to giving, beyond learning to teaching, beyond personal development to helping others develop. The second type, those who maintain temples and shrines, may not have achieved the deepest realization, but they contribute essential service that keeps spiritual traditions alive. They understand that practice requires infrastructure, that wisdom needs institutional support, that someone must handle the practical details that allow others to focus on inner development. The third type, the rice bags and clothes hangers, represent those who consume without contributing. who participate without really engaging, who go through motions without allowing themselves to be transformed. They take up space in spiritual communities without adding value or demonstrating genuine growth. Gasan's willingness to endure Tekisui's harsh methods reveals someone who understood that the most valuable learning often happens at the edge of our comfort zone. While other students protected themselves from discomfort by leaving, he remained available to whatever his teacher felt he needed, trusting that the discomfort itself might be the medicine his development required. Consider how this applies to your own approach to growth and learning. Do you seek teachers in situations that affirm your existing level of understanding? Or are you willing to engage with influences that challenge and stretch you? Do you prefer environments that feel comfortable, or can you appreciate the value of appropriate pressure? The story doesn't advocate accepting abuse or harmful treatment. There's a crucial difference between skillful challenge and destructive harshness. But it does suggest that we often avoid exactly the kinds of experiences that would promote our deepest development. We want growth without growing pains, strength without resistance training, wisdom without having our illusions challenged. Tekisui's methods worked for Gasan because the student brought the right attitude to difficult circumstances. Instead of viewing his teacher's severity as something to endure or escape, he saw it as precisely the kind of training his development required. This transformed potential suffering into actual strengthening. Modern psychology confirms this ancient wisdom. People who develop resilience and genuine confidence are often those who have learned to face challenging situations rather than avoiding them. The capacity to remain engaged with difficulty, whether in relationships, work, or spiritual practice, becomes a crucial life skill. The Buddha said, "The mind is everything. What you think, you become." Gasan's thoughts about his challenging training experience transformed it from obstacle into opportunity. The same harsh treatment that drove other students away became the means of his strengthening. Getton's categories invite self-examination. Which type of disciple am I? Do I contribute understanding that benefits others? Do I serve the continuation of wisdom through practical support? Or do I mainly consume resources while contributing little to the spiritual communities I'm part of? The story also suggests that the quality of our discipleship affects the quality of teaching we receive. Teachers naturally invest more energy in students who demonstrate genuine commitment and willingness to be challenged. Those who seek only comfort and affirmation may receive exactly that, but miss the deeper teachings that require courage to receive. Tonight, as you reflect on your own relationship to difficulty and challenge, can you sense the wisdom in Gasan's approach? Can you find areas where avoiding discomfort might actually be avoiding growth? As this story reveals, the most valuable developments in life, whether spiritual, emotional, or practical, often require the kind of pressure that reveals strength we didn't know we possessed. The question becomes, are we willing to grow strong under life's discipline, or do we prefer to remain comfortable rice bags and clothes hangers, taking up space without contributing to the deeper purposes that give existence its meaning? Let us now explore a story that redefines true wealth, unfolding when worldly success seeks spiritual blessing and receives unexpected wisdom. This is the story of the wealthy man who sought Sengai's blessing and received unexpected wisdom. In a bustling commercial district where silk merchants and tea traders built their fortunes, lived a man whose success had brought him everything the world considers valuable. His warehouses overflowed with goods. His coffers held more gold than he could spend in several lifetimes, and his influence extended throughout the region. Yet despite all this material abundance, An anxiety gnawed at his heart, the fear that his family's prosperity might not endure. This wealthy merchant had observed how quickly fortunes could change, how families that had been powerful for generations could lose everything through war, natural disaster, or simple bad luck. He wanted something more lasting than money or property to protect his lineage. He wanted a spiritual blessing that would ensure his descendants would continue to prosper long after he was gone. Having heard of Master Sengai's wisdom and reputation for writing auspicious calligraphy, the merchant approached the old teacher with his request. He arrived at the modest temple carrying expensive gifts and wearing his finest robes, eager to commission something that would become a treasured family heirloom. "Master Sengai," he said, with the respectful bow of someone accustomed to purchasing what he needed, "I would like you to write something profound for the continued prosperity of my family. Something that will be treasured from generation to generation, ensuring good fortune for my children and their children after them." Sengai listened with the patient attention he gave to all sincere requests, though his eyes held a glimmer that suggested he was considering something quite different from what the merchant expected. Without asking for clarification or discussing payment, he obtained a large sheet of his finest paper and prepared his brushes with the care of someone about to create an important work. The merchant watched eagerly as Sengai's brush moved across the paper with confident strokes. He was anticipating words about abundance, longevity, success, and divine protection, the kind of blessing that would look impressive hanging in his family's main hall and would provide spiritual insurance for future generations. When Sengai completed his work and turned the paper around for the merchant to see, the man's face went through a series of dramatic changes. First confusion, then shock, then mounting anger as he read the simple, devastating words. Father dies, son dies, grandson dies. "I asked you to write something for the happiness of my family," the merchant exclaimed, his voice rising with indignation. "Why do you make such a cruel joke of my sincere request? This is not a blessing, it's a curse. How could you write about death when I came seeking prosperity?" Sengai remained completely calm in the face of this outburst, his expression holding the gentle firmness of someone who had just delivered medicine that tastes bitter but heals completely. "No joke is intended," he explained with quiet authority. "Consider what I have written carefully. If before you yourself die, your son should die, this would grieve you beyond measure. The natural order would be broken, and your heart would be shattered by loss that violates every parent's expectation." He continued, his voice growing softer but more penetrating. "If your grandson should pass away before your son, both of you would be broken-hearted. To bury our children or grandchildren is perhaps the deepest suffering human beings can experience. It turns the world upside down and makes a mockery of all our plans and hopes." The merchant began to listen more carefully, sensing that something deeper was being revealed than his initial reaction had recognized. "But if your family, generation after generation, passes away in the order I have named," Sengai concluded, "it will be the natural course of life. Each person will live their full span, see their children grow to maturity, experience the joy of grandchildren, and then depart when their time is complete. I call this real prosperity." As the meaning of these words settled into the merchant's consciousness, his anger transformed into something approaching awe. He began to understand that Sengai had given him something far more valuable than conventional blessings about wealth and success. He had been offered a completely different way of thinking about what makes a family truly prosperous. The Buddha taught, of all footprints, that of the elephant is supreme. Similarly, of all meditative themes, that on death is supreme. Sengai's blessing forces us to confront what we really mean when we pray for our family's well-being. Why do we resist thinking about death when planning for the future? Zen Buddhism points to our deep-seated denial of impermanence and our tendency to equate prosperity with the accumulation of things that will outlast us. But true prosperity might be measured not by what we leave behind, but by how completely we live while we're here. The merchant's initial anger reveals how thoroughly we've been conditioned to see death as failure rather than natural completion. We speak of people losing battles with disease or succumbing to age, as if death were always premature defeat rather than the inevitable conclusion of every life story. Consider what the merchant was really asking for when he sought a blessing for continued prosperity. He wanted his family name to persist, his wealth to grow across generations, his legacy to become permanent. But Sengai's response suggests that such wishes miss the point of what makes existence truly valuable. The blessing of dying in natural order, parents before children, grandparents before grandchildren, is indeed profound prosperity because it means everyone gets to complete their full life cycle. It means children grow up with the security of parental protection. Parents experience the joy of seeing their offspring mature, and elders depart knowing their family line continues. Modern grief counseling recognizes what Sengai understood intuitively. The death of a child creates a unique form of suffering because it violates natural expectations. Parents assume they will die before their children, and when this order is reversed, it can shatter fundamental assumptions about how life should unfold. The merchant's request for something to be treasured from generation to generation received an unexpected fulfillment. Sengai's words would indeed be treasured, but not as magical protection against misfortune. Instead, they would serve as a reminder that the greatest fortune is not avoiding death, but experiencing life in its proper sequence. This teaching reframes our entire relationship to family planning and legacy creation. Instead of trying to ensure our descendants will be wealthy, famous, or powerful, we might focus on helping them live fully and love deeply while they're here. Instead of building monuments to our permanence, we might concentrate on creating meaningful relationships that honor the temporary nature of our time together. Zen teacher Dogen wrote, "Time is not separate from you, and as you are present, time does not go away." Real prosperity exists in the present moment's fullness rather than in future security. The merchant was seeking to control time through spiritual insurance, but Sengai pointed him toward accepting time's natural flow. The story also reveals how wisdom often comes disguised as what we least want to hear. The merchant wanted comforting words about endless good fortune, but received challenging truth about mortality's gift. True teachers give us what we need, rather than what we think we want. Sengai's blessing doesn't ignore the reality of suffering. Parents still grieve when elderly parents die, even when death comes at the expected time. But it distinguishes between grief that works with life's natural rhythm and suffering that fights against it. The first can be met with acceptance and even gratitude. The second creates additional layers of resistance and bitterness. The Buddha said, "Better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace." Sengai's apparently harsh blessing brings profound peace to anyone who truly understands its meaning. It offers liberation from the impossible task of preventing loss and redirects attention toward appreciating what we have while we have it. Tonight, as you consider your own wishes for your family's future, can you find the wisdom in Sengai's blessing? Can you shift from trying to prevent loss to celebrating the natural cycles that allow each generation to flourish in its proper time? As this story reveals, real prosperity isn't measured by what endures forever, but by how completely we live and love within the beautiful, temporary spans we're given. Our next story reveals the love that lets go, witnessed at the bedside of a dying master, where compassion expresses itself through brutal honesty. This is the story of Gassan's farewell to his dying teacher. In a mountain monastery, where the changing seasons marked the passage of years and the sound of bells measured the rhythm of contemplative life, Master Tekisui lay dying. For decades, this formidable teacher had shaped countless students through his uncompromising approach to Zen training, demanding nothing less than complete awakening from those who came to study under him. 3 days before what would be his final breath, Tekisui was confined to his simple bed, his body finally surrendering to the illness that had been slowly claiming him for months. Despite his physical weakness, his mind remained sharp as ever, still concerned with the practical matters that would ensure his teaching lineage continued after his death. At his bedside sat Gassan, the student he had chosen as his successor after years of rigorous testing. The relationship between these two men had been forged through countless encounters where Tekisui's harsh demands had gradually transformed Gassan from an eager but superficial seeker into someone capable of carrying forward authentic Zen teaching. Recently, a fire had destroyed one of the temples in their network, and Gassan had been working tirelessly to organize the rebuilding effort. Despite his teacher's declining health, the practical work of reconstruction continued. Lumber had to be ordered, craftsmen hired, funds raised, and countless details coordinated to restore the sacred space where future students would come to practice. As Tekisui lay propped against his pillows, watching his successor move between bedside vigils and administrative duties, he asked a question that seemed simple, but carried deeper implications. What are you going to do when you get the temple rebuilt? Gassan responded with the natural assumption that his teacher would recover enough to participate in the temple's reopening. When your sickness is over, we want you to speak there. The community is looking forward to hearing your teachings in the new hall. But Tekisui had been living with the reality of his approaching death for weeks, feeling his strength ebb each day and recognizing the signs that medical treatments could no longer ignore. His question hadn't been about planning future activities, but about testing whether his successor could face reality without comforting illusions. "Suppose I do not live until then?" he asked, his voice carrying the matter-of-fact tone of someone who had long since accepted what others still hoped to avoid. Gassan's response was immediate and practical. "Then we will get someone else." There was no dramatic emotion in his voice, no desperate denial of the possibility, no attempt to reassure his teacher that such thoughts were premature. He simply acknowledged that if Tekisui died, the temple would still need someone to provide the opening ceremony, and arrangements would be made accordingly. Tekisui pressed further, perhaps testing whether his student truly understood the challenges of maintaining a teaching lineage. "Suppose you cannot find anyone suitable?" Instead of the elaborate contingency plans or worried speculation that might be expected, Gassan's response was swift and decisive. His voice rose as he spoke with the authority of someone who had learned his teacher's lessons well. "Don't ask such foolish questions. Just go to sleep." The words hung in the air between teacher and student, carrying a weight that went far beyond their surface meaning. In that moment, roles seemed to reverse. The dying master receiving direction from his successor, the student telling the teacher to stop worrying about problems that hadn't yet arisen. Tekisui smiled as he heard these words, recognizing in them the very spirit he had spent years cultivating in his chosen heir. This was not disrespect or callousness, but the deepest form of care, love expressed through refusal to enable unnecessary suffering. The Buddha taught, "The past is gone, the future is not yet here. If we do not take care of the present moment, we miss our appointment with life." Gasan's response demonstrates how genuine presence sometimes requires cutting through anxiety about hypothetical futures. Why do we often mistake worry for caring and mistake acceptance for callousness? Zen Buddhism points to our tendency to confuse emotional drama with genuine concern. Tekisui's questions about future contingencies weren't helping anyone. They were simply expressions of anxiety about letting go of control. Gasan's seemingly harsh response reveals someone who had learned to distinguish between useful planning and useless fretting. His teacher was dying, and spending these precious final days worrying about problems that might never arise was a waste of the limited time they had together. Consider how often we engage in similar patterns in our own relationships. When someone we love is facing difficulty, we might exhaust ourselves and them by endlessly discussing worst-case scenarios instead of simply being present to what's actually happening now. Our anxiety masquerades as helpfulness, but it often creates additional burden for those who are already struggling. Gasan's instruction to just go to sleep contained multiple layers of meaning. On the surface, it was practical advice for a sick man who needed rest. More deeply, it was instruction to stop the mental activity that was preventing peaceful acceptance of his condition. Most profoundly, it was permission to let go of responsibilities that would continue being handled by others. The relationship between these two men had been built on Tekisui's refusal to coddle his students or protect them from difficult truths. Now, in his final days, Gasan was returning this gift by refusing to coddle his teacher's anxieties about the future. This wasn't abandonment, but the deepest form of respect, treating Tekisui as someone capable of facing death without requiring false reassurance. Modern hospice care recognizes similar principles. Dying people often need permission to stop worrying about how others will manage without them. Family members who can honestly say, "We'll be okay, you can let go," often provide more comfort than those who desperately insist everything will be fine if the person just keeps fighting. Tekisui's testing questions revealed a teacher's natural concern about whether his life's work would continue, but they also showed the mind's tendency to avoid present reality by focusing on future problems. Gasan's responses demonstrated that he had internalized his teacher's most important lesson: face what's actually happening, rather than creating additional suffering through mental elaboration. The story also illustrates how true spiritual succession involves not just inheriting authority, but embodying the essential spirit of the teaching. Gasan had learned to apply his master's uncompromising honesty even to his master himself, showing that he understood the principle behind the method rather than just mimicking external behaviors. Zen teacher Linji said, "There is nothing special to do, just be ordinary." Gasan's ordinary response to extraordinary circumstances, practical planning combined with refusal to enable unnecessary anxiety, demonstrated deep understanding of how enlightened mind operates in daily life. The reversal of roles in this story points to something essential about genuine relationships. When we truly care for someone, we serve their highest good rather than their immediate comfort. Gassan's rudeness was actually profound kindness. The gift of treating his dying teacher as someone strong enough to face reality without protection. The Buddha said, "Attachment is the root of suffering." Takisui's questions revealed residual attachment to controlling outcomes even after death. Gassan's response was like a sword cutting through this attachment, freeing his teacher to focus on the present moment rather than hypothetical problems. Tonight, as you consider your own relationships with people facing difficulty or transition, can you sense the wisdom in Gassan's approach? Can you distinguish between worry that masquerades as caring and genuine presence that serves another's deepest needs? As this story reveals, sometimes the most loving thing we can do is refuse to participate in someone else's unnecessary suffering, even when they're expecting us to join them in their anxiety. True compassion sometimes requires the courage to say what needs to be heard, rather than what the other person wants to hear. Our final story reveals a profound truth about the difference between intellectual understanding and embodied realization, and how life has a way of testing whether our spiritual concepts can withstand the friction of actual experience. This is the story of Yamaoka Teshu and the bamboo pipe that shattered his philosophy. In the bustling capital city, where ambitious young students traveled from temple to temple seeking the most renowned teachers, Yamaoka Teshu had already acquired a reputation as a brilliant intellectual with penetrating insight into Buddhist philosophy. His mind was sharp as a blade, capable of analyzing the most complex metaphysical concepts and articulating sophisticated understanding of emptiness, non-duality, and the ultimate nature of reality. Teshu approached his spiritual education like a scholar collecting degrees, visiting one master after another to demonstrate his attainment and receive confirmation of his understanding. He had studied the classical texts exhaustively, could quote the most profound teachings from memory, and possessed the kind of conceptual clarity that impressed other students and even some teachers. On this particular day, he had come to visit Master Dokuan at Shikoku Temple, eager to display the depth of his realization to this respected teacher. Dokuan was known for his unconventional methods and his ability to see through pretense, but Teshu felt confident that his understanding was genuine and would be recognized as such. Dokuan received his visitor in a simple room overlooking a small garden, sitting quietly with his bamboo pipe and tobacco, occasionally taking leisurely puffs while observing his young guest with the patient attention of someone who had seen many such demonstrations over the years. Teshu wasted no time in presenting his spiritual credentials. With the confidence of someone who had mastered complex philosophy, he began his recitation. "Master, I have come to share my understanding with you. After extensive study and meditation, I have realized that the mind, Buddha, and sentient beings, after all, do not exist." He continued with growing enthusiasm, warming to his theme. "The true nature of phenomena is emptiness. There is no realization, no delusion, no sage, no mediocrity. There is no giving and nothing to be received." These were not random words, but precise quotations from advanced Zen teachings about the ultimate perspective where all distinctions dissolve into undifferentiated awareness. Teshu delivered them with the authority of someone who believed he had penetrated to the heart of reality and could speak from direct experience rather than mere book learning. Dokuan listened to this impressive display without comment, continuing to smoke his pipe with the same unhurried rhythm he had maintained before his visitor's arrival. His expression revealed nothing, neither approval nor disapproval, neither agreement nor argument. He simply sat in silence, occasionally drawing on his pipe and releasing small clouds of smoke into the peaceful air. When Teshu finished his presentation, he waited expectantly for acknowledgement of his profound understanding. Surely such clear articulation of the highest teachings would earn recognition from this respected master. The silence stretched between them, filled only by the distant sounds of temple life and the occasional whisper of wind through the garden. Then, without any warning or change in expression, Dokuon suddenly raised his bamboo pipe and struck Teshu sharply across the head with it. The young man's philosophical composure shattered instantly. His face flushed red with indignation, his hands clenched into fists, and his voice rose with outrage at this unexpected and seemingly unprovoked attack. "How dare you strike me?" he shouted, his carefully cultivated spiritual demeanor completely forgotten in the surge of anger that overwhelmed his consciousness. "What kind of teacher are you? I came here in good faith to share my understanding, and you respond with violence." Dokuon set down his pipe and looked at his visitor with the gentle attention of someone who had just completed a successful experiment. When he spoke, his voice carried the quiet authority of someone stating an obvious fact. "If nothing exists," he inquired mildly, "where did this anger come from?" The question hung in the air like incense, penetrating straight to the heart of Teshu's supposed realization. In that moment, the young man's entire philosophical edifice collapsed like a house of cards touched by wind. He had just spent several minutes explaining how nothing really existed, yet here he was, undeniably experiencing very real anger at very real physical pain from a very real bamboo pipe wielded by a very real teacher. The gap between his intellectual understanding and his actual experience became impossible to ignore. His mind had mastered the concepts of emptiness and non-existence, but his body and emotions were clearly operating according to very different principles. The anger that surged through him was absolutely real and immediate, regardless of what philosophy might say about the ultimate nature of existence. The Buddha taught, "Do not believe in anything simply because you have heard it. Do not believe in anything simply because it is spoken and rumored by many. But after observation and analysis, when you find that anything agrees with reason and is conducive to the good and benefit of one and all, then accept it and live up to it." Dokuon's bamboo pipe provided exactly this kind of direct observation and analysis. Why do we often mistake intellectual understanding for genuine realization? Zen Buddhism points to the mind's capacity for creating elaborate conceptual structures that can seem identical to direct experience, but lack the transformative power of actual awakening. We can memorize profound teachings while remaining unchanged by them. Teshu's presentation represented what Zen calls dry enlightenment, understanding that exists only in the realm of ideas without penetrating into the deeper layers of experience, where emotions, reactions, and habitual patterns still operate according to their own logic. He could speak eloquently about emptiness while being completely full of self-importance and spiritual pride. Consider how this pattern shows up in daily life when our stated beliefs collide with immediate experience. We might intellectually understand that anger is suffering, yet find ourselves furious when someone cuts us off in traffic. We might know that all possessions are impermanent, yet feel devastated when something precious is lost or broken. Dokuon's method was surgical in its precision. Rather than engaging in philosophical debate about Teshu's concepts, he created a direct experience that would reveal whether those concepts had any practical reality. The bamboo pipe became a perfect teaching tool, immediate, undeniable, and impossible to rationalize away. The genius of this approach lies in its recognition that genuine spiritual understanding must be able to withstand the test of ordinary human experience. If our realization disappears the moment someone strikes us with a pipe, how deep could it really have been? If our understanding of emptiness evaporates when we encounter solid bamboo applied to our skull, what kind of understanding was it? Modern psychology recognizes similar principles in the difference between intellectual insight and integrated change. People can understand their patterns perfectly while continuing to repeat them, can analyze their problems extensively while remaining stuck in them. Real transformation requires something deeper than conceptual clarity. The story also reveals how spiritual teachers sometimes need to shock students out of comfortable abstractions into direct encounter with immediate reality. Dokuwan's strike wasn't cruel or arbitrary, but precisely calibrated to create the exact experience Teshu needed to recognize the gap between his words and his actual state of consciousness. Teshu's anger, embarrassing as it was, became the doorway to authentic learning. His philosophical concepts had been creating a kind of spiritual bypass around his actual human experience. The bamboo pipe forced him to confront the reality of his emotional reactions and physical responses, which were operating according to very different principles than his intellectual understanding suggested. Zen teacher Huang Po said, "The foolish reject what they see, not what they think. The wise reject what they think, not what they see." Teshu had been rejecting what he could see, his own anger, the solid reality of the pipe, the undeniable existence of pain, in favor of what he thought about ultimate reality. The Buddha said, "Better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace." Dokuwan's single question, "Where did this anger come from?" was worth more than all of Teshu's elaborate philosophical presentations, because it pointed directly to the place where real spiritual work needed to happen. Tonight, as you reflect on areas where your understanding might be more intellectual than experiential, can you sense the wisdom in Dokuwan's teaching method? Can you find places where life has struck you with its own bamboo pipe, revealing gaps between your concepts and your actual responses? As this story shows, sometimes the most valuable spiritual teachings come not through elegant philosophy, but through direct encounters with our own immediate, undeniable, and very real human experience. The anger that embarrasses us might be exactly what awakens us to the difference between thinking about truth and actually living it. Finally, we reach the end of our teachings tonight. As we complete our journey through these 18 ancient stories, can you recognize that the peace you've been seeking has been present all along in your own awareness? Can you feel how the wisdom in these tales is not something you need to acquire, but something you already possess, waiting to be uncovered beneath the layers of complexity we so often add to simple existence? As the Buddha taught at the beginning of our journey together, peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. The ultimate truth these stories point toward is available right here in the miracle of ordinary consciousness. The silent witness that has observed every word, every teaching, every moment of recognition throughout our time together. Let us reflect on the profound journey we have shared. The samurai and the Zen master showed us how heaven and hell are states we create through our own reactions. The questioning disciple learned that wisdom comes disguised as simple experiences, like watching dogs with complete presence. The farmer's lost cows revealed how happiness comes from having nothing to lose, because we found what cannot be taken away. Matajuro's sword training taught us that patience accelerates genuine mastery while urgency slows learning. The ghost dissolved when faced with questions beyond guilt, showing how our minds create the demons that torment us. The 10 pilgrims discovered what we seek was never missing. We simply forgot to count ourselves among those already whole. Each story has been like a facet of a single diamond, reflecting the same essential light. What we seek through spiritual practice is actually the very awareness that is seeking right now. The Buddha taught, 3 things cannot remain hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. As you continue your path, may these truths remain with you, not as concepts to remember, but as invitations to recognize the peace, wisdom, and completeness that have never been absent from your immediate experience. May you carry these teachings like seeds that bloom into understanding in daily life. May you recognize the empty boats of projection and choose not to pursue them. May you taste the sword of present moment awareness that cuts through illusions of past and future. May you discover your own invisible sutras, written in acts of kindness that create endless ripples of compassion. Thank you for sharing this journey through ancient wisdom. May you rest deeply tonight, knowing the search is over because what you were seeking was never lost. May you wake refreshed tomorrow, carrying the silence of the cricket in the temple, the generosity of the stingy artist, and the laughter of those who discovered the 10th pilgrim was never missing. May you find in this very moment the peace that has always been yours, not as something to achieve, but as something to remember. May your heart settle into the stillness that needs no temple, the wholeness that requires no journey. May you rest in the gentle knowing that you are already home, already complete, already free. In the quiet space between thoughts, in the pause between breaths, may you discover the sanctuary you've been seeking was never anywhere but here.